Hello, everyone. Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in Invincible as Thragg, Part 5. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
The atmosphere over Chicago crackled with tension as two forces faced each other in the night sky. Far above them, the battle between Emperor Thragg and Grand Regent Thragg continued somewhere beyond Earth's orbit. But here, a different confrontation was brewing. On one side stood Roberta, her form hovering with unnatural grace, the battle beast coat held protectively against her chest, her energy field ensuring not even a speck of dust would touch the precious garment. Beside her, Nolan maintained a defensive stance, while Viltrumite Mark and Royal Mark flanked their positions. Royal Conquest and Mohawk Mark completed their formation, each ready for combat. Opposing them were the 44 remaining Viltrumites of this universe, their white uniforms gleaming in the moonlight. At their head stood Original Conquest, his scarred face twisted in barely contained bloodlust. General Craig, Anissa, and Lucan positioned themselves as commanders, their presence alone keeping the other Viltrumites in perfect formation. Original Conquest flexed his newly reconstructed metal arm, the advanced alloy gleaming as he tested its responsiveness. With deliberate slowness, he punched his left palm, creating a thunderous boom. "Why should we not kill them all now?" he growled, his voice carrying across the night air. "We have the numbers. And these traitors," he spat the word, glaring at Mohawk Mark and Viltrumite Mark, "deserve death for turning against the ideals of Viltrum. Our Grand Regent will deal with their Emperor," Craig added, his confidence in his leader absolute. "We should clean up these lesser matters while they battle." Anissa's lips curved in a predatory smile as she studied the opposing group. "It won't even be a challenge. 6 against 44? The odds are delicious." Pink energy began to emanate from Roberta's form, one arm still cradling the battle beast coat while her other hand rose slowly. The energy started as a subtle glow but rapidly intensified until it enveloped the entire area in a magenta light that turned the night sky into an alien landscape. Her eyes transformed into pools of pure energy, power radiating from her in waves that made even the hardened Viltrumites shift uncomfortably. The air itself seemed to bend around her, reality distorting at the edges of her influence. "You speak of numbers," she said, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Let me explain something about molecular manipulation without mental blocks." The pink aura intensified further, wrapping around all but the 4 strongest Viltrumites. "Only you 4, Conquest, Craig, Anissa, and Lucan, have the unconscious strength to resist my ability to alter atomic structure. The rest..." She raised her head, and 40 Viltrumite warriors found themselves completely immobilized within her power. Their bodies began to distort slightly, demonstrating her absolute control over their molecular structure. Several tried to break free, their legendary strength useless against her fundamental control over matter itself. "Shall we test how much pressure a Viltrumite can withstand before they pop like overfilled balloons?" Roberta asked, her tone clinically detached despite the horrifying threat. "I estimate the blood rain would be visible from several states away. Your losses would be substantial. And then you 4 would still have to face us, and trust me, I'm just getting started." Original Conquest's scarred face contorted with rage, but a flicker of uncertainty crossed his features as he watched his fellow warriors struggle helplessly in Roberta's grip. Even with his enhanced strength and new metal arm, he recognized the threat her power posed to their forces. "You wouldn't dare," Craig snarled, though his usual confidence wavered slightly. "Such an act would bring the full might of the Viltrum Empire down upon you." "Your empire?" Roberta's laugh was cold, devoid of humor. "Your empire consists of exactly 46 living Viltrumites, and I currently hold 40 of them in the palm of my hand." She demonstrated by closing her fingers slightly, causing the trapped warriors to cry out in pain as their molecular structure began to compress. "Consider your position carefully," she continued, her free arm still cradling the battle beast coat protectively while her other hand conducted the symphony of potential destruction. "You 4 might survive this encounter, might even manage to kill some of us in the process. But your race? Your precious empire? I could end it right now." Anissa took an aggressive step forward, her fists clenched. "You're bluffing. No one could possess such power." "No one." Roberta's voice carried a dangerous edge as her glowing eyes fixed on Anissa. I am not no one. I am one chosen by the Emperor himself as worthy to stand beside him. One he trusts enough to guard his precious coat. The pink energy surrounding her intensified further, causing the very air to crackle with power. Would you like to test your theory against 40 of your comrades' lives? Before anyone could respond to Roberta's declaration, a voice rang out across the Chicago sky, deep, commanding, and carrying an edge that made every Viltrumite present freeze instinctively. Enough. Something hurtled through the air toward General Thragg, who caught it reflexively. His eyes widened in shock as he recognized what he held, a partially melted skull, still warm to the touch, bearing the unmistakable bone structure of a Viltrumite. Emperor Thragg descended from above, his enhanced form now noticeably taller and more imposing than before, his naked body bearing no signs of injury despite the epic battle that had just concluded. His expression was impassive as he regarded the assembled warriors, but his eyes carried a dangerous light that made even original Conquest take an involuntary step back. Your Grand Regent, Emperor Thragg stated, his voice carrying easily across the night air, chose pride over evolution. His remains should serve as a reminder of where that path leads. A slight blush colored Roberta's cheeks as she beheld Emperor Thragg's enhanced form, her eyes traveling over his physique with a barely masked appreciation. Though she maintained her composure, her gaze lingered perhaps longer than strictly necessary, committing every detail to memory. Gathering herself, she floated forward, her voice steady despite the pink tinge still evident on her face. Emperor, allow me to assist with your attire. Though a small part of her mourned the loss of such a view, duty and propriety demanded action. Thragg nodded his assent, and Roberta's molecular manipulation abilities went to work. Pink energy flowed around him, matter coalescing into the traditional red and white uniform of the Emperor, complete with the Viltrum Empire symbol proudly displayed on his chest. The fabric formed perfectly to his enhanced frame, each detail precise and immaculate. Then, with graceful movement, she flew slightly above and behind him. The battle beast coat, which she had protected so carefully, was now ready to return to its rightful owner. With delicate precision, she draped the white fur over his shoulders, her fingers brushing against him as she secured the clasps. She took special care positioning Battle Beast's head on Thragg's left shoulder, ensuring it sat exactly as it should, a trophy and memorial both, now adorning the powerful Emperor. Emperor Thragg stood resplendent in his restored regalia, the Battle Beast coat adding to his already overwhelming presence. His enhanced form seemed to dominate the very sky itself, the Chicago lights below casting dramatic shadows across his features. General Thragg stared at the skull in his hands, his fingers tracing the partially melted bone structure. Impossible, he whispered, though the evidence was undeniable. The Grand Regent was unwilling to evolve, Emperor Thragg completed the thought, his deep voice carrying absolute authority. He chose destruction over elevation. That choice was his right, but his death need not be yours. Original Conquest's metal arm creaked as his fist clenched. You killed our leader, he snarled, though there was more uncertainty than threat in his voice. I offered him guidance, Emperor Thragg corrected. I offered him a chance to fulfill our father's vision. He refused. His gaze swept across the assembled Viltrumites, still held in Roberta's power. What choice will you make? Anissa was the first to understand the shifting winds of power. Without hesitation, she dropped to one knee, pressing her fist to her chest in the traditional Viltrumite salute. Emperor, she declared, acknowledging his new status. Lucan followed immediately after, then General Thragg, who gently set the skull down before kneeling. Original Conquest remained standing longest, his scarred face a mask of conflicting emotions, his loyalty to the Grand Regent warring with the ideals of Viltrum he respects, before finally submitting with a growl of acceptance. For as was Viltrum's ideal, the strongest and wisest of them all rules, no matter how much one may dislike it. Roberta gradually released her hold on the other 40 Viltrumites. One by one, they too knelt, until the night sky was filled with warriors paying homage to their new emperor. Rise, Emperor Thragg commanded. The Viltrum Empire enters a new era. One of true elevation, not mere conquest. Those who accept this path will find their strength growing beyond anything they imagine possible. Those who resist. He left the sentence unfinished, though his meaning was clear. The skull in Thragg's hands was testament enough. Your numbers have remained few, No, they've even lessened. Emperor Thragg stated, addressing the assembled Viltrumites. 44 warriors, all that remains of a once mighty race. Under the Grand Regent's leadership, you maintained power through uncontrolled fear and brutality. That ends today. He gestured toward Earth below them. This world will not simply be conquered, it will also be elevated. Its people will not be enslaved but integrated and evolved. The breeding program will proceed under my direct supervision, with volunteers who understand our greater purpose. Original conquest shifted uncomfortably. And those who find this new direction difficult to accept will be given time to adapt, Emperor Thragg replied, though his tone carried a subtle warning. But not indefinitely. The Empire moves forward. Those who cannot or will not evolve with it will be left behind. His enhanced form seemed to grow even more imposing as he continued. You have seen my power. You have witnessed what true evolution can achieve. This is but the beginning. The multiverse itself awaits our guidance. General Craig stepped forward, his fist still pressed to his chest. Command us, Emperor. Show us this new path. First, Emperor Thragg declared, you will return to Viltrum. Inform the High Council of the changes that have occurred. Then, prepare for my arrival. The Empire's capital must be made ready for a new era. He turned to Roberta, who still hovered nearby. Your demonstration of power was impressive. Remember that loyalty is rewarded in my empire. A slight blush colored her cheeks again as she bowed her head in acknowledgement. Thank you, Emperor. With a gesture, Emperor Thragg dismissed the Viltrumites. They departed in perfect formation, their white uniforms gleaming in the moonlight as they accelerated toward space. As the night fell silent once more over Chicago, Emperor Thragg's words echoed in the minds of all present. The multiverse itself awaits our guidance. A new age had begun, and none could predict where it would lead. The morning sun cast gentle shadows through the hospital room window, painting warm patterns across the sterile white sheets. Thragg stood beside war-torn Eve's bed, his imposing frame somehow making the medical equipment seem smaller, yet his presence brought comfort rather than intimidation. With careful precision, he adjusted her pillows, his massive hands moving with a delicacy that would have shocked those who knew him only as a conqueror. The battle beast coat draped regally around his shoulders shifted with each movement, its white for catching the sunlight. Here, he said softly, positioning another pillow to better support her back. Your posture affects healing efficiency. War-torn Eve watched him with undisguised affection, a smile touching her lips, something that had been rare before his intervention in her life. The haunted look that had dominated her features was fading gradually, replaced by growing warmth when he was near. The cellular regeneration continues to exceed expectations, Thragg noted, studying the medical displays. Yet there was something else in his tone, a hint of pride, perhaps, or satisfaction at her progress. Your body is adapting well to the treatments. All thanks to you, Dad, she said softly, the word carrying none of the hesitation it had held in the beginning. Her fingers played with the edge of the blanket as she looked up at him. I never thought I could feel safe again, but now. Thragg's expression shifted subtly, not the dramatic change others might show, but a softening around his eyes that she had learned to recognize as affection. His hand moved to adjust the blanket where she had disturbed it, the gesture protective rather than merely efficient. When we return to my universe, he said, his deep voice carrying a gentleness reserved for few, there is much I would show you beyond these medical walls. The castle of Viltrum, though situated atop Mount Everest, contains beautiful gardens. Your sister designed them herself, based on knowledge gathered from 1,000 worlds. Sister, the word still filled her with both wonder and a hint of trepidation. What if her counterpart disliked her? What if she was ashamed of her, as she believes, she, her past self, would be at her weakness? Would that make Thragg angry? Would that make him choose the other Eve and leave her to make the other Eve happier? Thragg, sensing her sudden anxiety, placed his hand gently on her shoulder. Your concerns are unfounded, he stated, his tone carrying absolute certainty. Eve has been anticipating your arrival with great enthusiasm. She asks about your recovery daily. War-torn Eve's eyes widened slightly. She does. Indeed. She has been quite insistent about ensuring your comfort. A slight warmth colored his tone. The gardens are merely the beginning. She has planned to redesign an entire wing of the castle for you. But... War-torn Eve hesitated, her fingers twisting the blanket. I'm not. I mean, I'm broken. Damaged. Won't she be disappointed? No. Thragg's response was immediate and firm. You survived. You endured. These are traits Viltrumites respect. And Eve. He paused, choosing his words carefully. She understands pain not as you do, but still in her own way. She is still you after all, and has experienced being different just as you have before all this. But that, as I have said many times, does not make you broken or damaged. She will wholeheartedly welcome you. War-torn Eve looked up at him, hope warring with lingering doubt in her expression. You're sure? I do not offer false assurances, Thragg stated. You are my daughter now, as she is. Neither supersedes the other. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Thragg's posture straightened slightly, though his voice remained gentle as he addressed War-torn Eve. Rest now. We will continue this discussion later. Promise? She asked softly. You have my word, he assured her, adjusting her blanket one final time before moving toward the door. She settled back into her pillows, watching as he stepped into the hallway. The door closed behind him with a soft click, sealing her in the safety he had created for her. In the corridor stood original Mark, his usual vitality dimmed by obvious exhaustion. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his shoulders sagged with the weight of sleepless nights. His gaze met Thragg's, carrying a burden of unspoken turmoil. Mark stood silently for a moment, the weight of his recent actions visible in every line of his exhausted frame. Good Levy's words about suffering across the multiverse echoed in his mind, intertwining with the visceral memory of crushing Mad Levy's skull, an act that still haunted his dreams, yet one he couldn't bring himself to regret. The sight of Thragg emerging from War-torn Eve's room, showing such gentle care to someone he'd only recently met, only intensified Mark's inner turmoil. Here was the being who claimed he would conquer not just this Earth, but all Earths, all realities. Yet he showed more compassion to a broken girl than Mark had seen from many people. Why? He suddenly began asking, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. Not as the Emperor of Viltrum, not as the strongest being in the universe, not as the heir to Argal's vision, but as you, as Thragg himself. Why do you want to conquer everything? The multiverse itself. Thragg studied the young hero, noting the conflict evident in his posture and the way his hands clenched and unclenched unconsciously. After a moment's consideration, he gestured for Mark to follow him to a nearby window overlooking the city. Have you ever observed an infant learning to walk? Thragg asked, his deep voice surprisingly contemplative. They stumble, fall, and hurt themselves. Yet parents do not intervene immediately. They allow the child to learn and to grow through that struggle. He turned to face Mark directly. But what if that child were about to fall down stairs? To walk into traffic? Then intervention becomes necessary. The parent's greater understanding and power must be exercised, regardless of the child's desire for independence. So that's how you see us? As children. Mark's voice carried a note of challenge, though tempered by genuine curiosity. I see potential, Thragg corrected. In every universe, in every world, I see beings stumbling toward greatness, yet constantly at risk of destroying themselves before reaching it. My desire. He paused, seeming to search for the right words, is not merely to rule, but to guide. To ensure that the potential I see is not wasted through ignorance or fear. And who decided you should be the one to make that choice? Mark pressed. What gives you the right? The same thing that gives a parent the right to stop their child from walking into traffic, Thragg replied. The ability to see the danger and the power to prevent it. Mark frowned, processing this. But parents eventually let their children make their own choices, their own mistakes. They don't control them forever. You misunderstand, Thragg replied, his deep voice carrying both authority and patience. A child gaining independence does not negate the parent's position. They remain mother or father regardless of the child's growth. He turned to face Mark fully, his large frame casting a long shadow in the morning light. When I speak of ruling the multiverse, I do not mean eternal micromanagement of every detail. That would be inefficient. His gaze swept across the cityscape below. Consider your own world's history. Children leave their parents' direct control, yes. They make their own choices and build their own lives. But they still exist within the framework their parents established. They still turn to them for guidance in times of crisis. Mark frowned slightly. So you're saying you'll be what, the multiverse's eternal father figure? I will be Emperor, Thragg stated simply. Worlds will gain autonomy as they prove themselves ready, yes. They will make their own choices within the boundaries I establish. But I will remain their ultimate authority, their final arbiter. Just as a father remains a father even when his children are grown. He gestured toward the horizon. Your own father. Does he cease to be your father simply because you've grown? Does his position in your life diminish merely because you can make your own choices? No, Mark admitted reluctantly. Putting aside my own messed up relationship with my dad, it's still different. He's my actual father. And I will be the father of a new age, Thragg declared. One who guides countless worlds toward their highest potential, while maintaining the authority to intervene when necessary. Freedom within structure. Independence within order. His voice carried absolute conviction as he continued. The multiverse requires this. It needs not just guidance but permanent leadership. A constant presence that ensures stability across all realities. And you think you're the right being for that role? Mark challenged again, though his tone held more uncertainty than defiance. I know I am, Thragg replied without hesitation. I have the power to enforce it, the wisdom to guide it, and the vision to see it through. The multiverse will evolve under my rule, but it will always be under my rule. This is not tyranny, Mark Grayson. It is a necessity. He turned back to face the young hero. Your world, like all others, will have the freedom to grow, to develop, to make its own choices. But always within the framework I establish. Always with the understanding that final authority rests with me. He repeated it once more to make sure Mark gets it. Think on this, Thragg commanded softly. Observe how a parent's authority can coexist with a child's independence. How guidance does not preclude growth. Then you will understand what I offer to all realities. Mark stood silently, the enormity of Thragg's vision pressing down on him like a physical weight. The Emperor's words carried a finality that left no room for argument, yet somehow didn't feel oppressive. Perhaps because, deep down, he was beginning to understand the truth in them. Original Mark's POV, I sit on the lunar surface, staring down at Earth floating in the void. From up here, it looks so peaceful, so perfect. You can't see the chaos, the suffering, the constant battles that we heroes fight day after day. 2 weeks. That's all it's been since Thragg arrived in our world. 2 weeks that have completely upended everything I thought I knew about right and wrong, about power and responsibility. I run my hand through my hair, a habit I've picked up when stressed. The conversation with Thragg keeps playing in my mind, mixing with everything else I've observed about him in this short time. The way he interacts with Oliver, showing genuine patience with my little brother's endless questions and enthusiasm. Not just tolerating them, but actually engaging, explaining things in ways that make Oliver's eyes light up with understanding. Then there's how he is with the Eves. With my Eve, he's respectful but distant, clearly recognizing her wariness. With Royal Eve, there's this warmth. Not obvious, but it's there in subtle ways, the slight softening of his voice, the way he listens when she speaks. And War-Torn Eve, as my more Viltrumite variant has been calling her, calls himself also Viltrumite Mark. The guy clearly loves giving these nicknames. God, that hits different. Seeing him tend to her with such care, such genuine protectiveness. He's so far from the cold conqueror I expected him to be. Even with the other Marks, my variants, he shows this weird mix of authority and, is guidance the right word? He doesn't coddle them, exactly, but offers them direction, purpose, and a chance to be better under his leadership. The multiverse needs permanent leadership, he'd said. A constant presence that ensures stability across all realities. I'd challenged that, of course. It's what I do, fight against anyone trying to control others. But then I think about Crazy Levy, about crushing his skull in my hands. About how good it felt to finally stop showing mercy to someone who only caused more death with every chance they got. I remember what good Levy showed us, all those worlds where things went wrong. Where I became a monster, where Eve suffered, where everything fell apart because there wasn't enough power to maintain order. The same thing that gives a parent the right to stop their child from walking into traffic, Thragg had said when I asked what gave him the right to rule. The ability to see the danger, and the power to prevent it. Looking down at Earth now, I can't help but see all the traffic we're walking into. All the threats we barely survive, all the villains who keep coming back, all the innocent people caught in the crossfire. We try so hard to be heroes, to save everyone we can. But maybe that's not enough. Maybe we need something more. Someone more. A shooting star streaks across my field of vision, and I remember something else, how Thragg moved war-torn Eve to his universe for better treatment. Just opened a portal between realities like it was nothing. The power to reshape worlds, to travel between dimensions, to enforce real change. I clench my fist, feeling the phantom sensation of Mad Levy's skull crumbling in my grip. That choice, to finally end a threat permanently, it changed something in me. Made me understand that sometimes the hardest choice is the right one. Maybe that's what Thragg is. The hard choice. The necessary one. I push off from the lunar surface, letting myself float higher above the moon's cratered landscape. The Earth fills my vision, blue, green, and white swirling together in perfect harmony from this distance. Freedom within structure. Independence within order. Thragg's words echo in my mind as I spread my arms wide, feeling the vastness of space around me. It's funny, in a way. All this time I've been fighting against the idea of someone ruling Earth, ruling all realities. But what have I been doing as a hero? Enforcing rules. Protecting order. Just, on a much smaller scale. And look how that's worked out. One city, and I can barely keep it safe. One world, and we're constantly on the brink of destruction. How many times have we almost lost everything? How many times have we just barely scraped by? I close my eyes, feeling the absolute silence of space around me. The memory of Mad Levy's death plays again, but this time, I don't flinch from it. That moment wasn't just about vengeance or protection. It was about accepting a harder truth. Sometimes the only way to save lives is to take the difficult path. I could be more than just another hero, I whisper into the void. More than just another fighter trying to hold back the tide. The thought expands in my mind like a supernova. Under Thragg's rule, I wouldn't just be defending one city, one world. I could be part of something greater. Something that actually fixes problems instead of just patching them up until the next crisis. A memory flashes, Thragg standing over war-torn Eve's bed, adjusting her pillows with those massive hands that could shatter planets. Power and gentleness, perfectly balanced. Strength used with purpose, with wisdom. I open my eyes, looking down at my own hands. How many times have I pulled my punches? How many times have I shown mercy only to see more people die later? But under Thragg's guidance. His sword, I murmur, the phrase coming unbidden to my lips. Something about it feels right. Not a mindless weapon, but a blade with purpose. An instrument of justice wielded with precision. I turn my gaze back to Earth, seeing it with new clarity. His knight, I continue, the title settling into place like it was always meant to be there. The Emperor's Knight. The role crystallizes in my mind, not a servant, not a slave, but a warrior dedicated to a greater purpose. I remember reading about them, finding them cool, basically heroes before there were heroes. Knights had autonomy, had honor, and had their own code. But they served something bigger than themselves. And isn't that what being a hero is supposed to be about anyway? Serving a greater good? I flex my fingers, imagining the possibilities. With Thragg's guidance, his wisdom, his power backing me, I could be more effective than ever. No more holding back. No more watching threats return again and again because we couldn't or wouldn't end them permanently. The Emperor's Knight, I say again, louder this time, letting the words fill the vacuum around me. Unheard by all, not even by my ears, only heard within my own mind. His sword of justice across the multiverse. It doesn't feel like surrender. It feels like becoming more. Like finally understanding my true purpose. I spread my arms wider, feeling whatever is in space wash over me, imagining I can feel every dimension, every reality that needs this kind of guidance. This kind of protection. A shooting star streaks past again, and this time I smile. The universe itself seems to be confirming my choice. I accept, I declare to the everything, to myself, to whatever higher power that might be listening. I choose to serve. Not out of fear or weakness, but because it's right. Because it's necessary. The words still carry no sound in the vacuum of space, but they resonate through every fiber of my being. This is what I was meant to be. Not just a hero, not just a defender, but a knight of the new order. Thragg's sword of justice, helping to forge a better multiverse. I turn my face toward Earth one last time, knowing that when I return, it will be with new purpose. New clarity. The Emperor's Knight. Yeah, that really sounds right. It sounds like destiny. The medical wing's afternoon light streamed through large windows, casting warm rays across the pristine floor. In a corner of war-torn Eve's room, Thragg sat on a specially reinforced chair, his massive frame somehow managing to look elegant despite the size disparity. Before him stood an easel, and his hands, those same hands that had crushed the battle beast, moved with surprising delicacy across the canvas. The battle beast coat draped regally around his shoulders as he worked, its white fur catching the sunlight. War-torn Eve sat in her wheelchair, positioned carefully by the window. Royal Eve stood beside her, one hand resting gently on her counterpart's shoulder. The contrast between them was striking, Royal Eve's confident posture and bright smile against war-torn Eve's more hesitant, fragile demeanor. Yet there was something beautiful in that contrast. War-torn Eve's smile, though smaller, carried a genuine warmth that hadn't been there weeks ago. Royal Eve's presence seemed to both highlight and somehow soften her counterpart's vulnerability. Thragg's brush moved with precision, capturing every detail. The way the light played across their faces, the subtle differences in their expressions, the bond already forming between them despite their vastly different experiences. "Remember," he said softly, his deep voice gentler than most would believe possible, "stillness enhances accuracy." War-torn Eve's fingers fidgeted slightly with her blanket. "Sorry, Dad," she whispered, trying to hold her position. Royal Eve squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "You're doing great," she encouraged. Then, with a playful glance at Thragg, "Though I still can't believe the Emperor of the Universe spends his time painting portraits." "Art serves purpose," Thragg replied, his brush never pausing. "It preserves moments worth remembering. And this." He studied their faces with careful attention. "This is such a moment." The afternoon light caught the slight wetness in war-torn Eve's eyes, turning them to amber. Royal Eve's smile softened as she noticed, her hand moving to gently wipe away the tear before it could fall. "My daughters," Thragg stated simply, but those two words carried volumes of meaning. Protection. Pride. Purpose. And something else, something that might have surprised those who knew him only as the terror of the universe. Love. Suddenly, though, the interface appeared before him, not of his own choice, hovering between him and the canvas. The brush paused mid-stroke as he read the unexpected notification. Status, name, Thragg, formerly Samel. Race, Viltrumite. Position, Emperor of the Viltrum Empire. Strength, Supreme. Age, Classified. Attributes, Physical power, Beyond planetary. Durability, Beyond planetary. Flight speed, massively faster than light. Combat skill, Master of all known techniques. Intelligence, Strategic genius. Functions, Universal travel, unlocked. Conditions met, Control of the current world stabilized. Knight of Justice acquired. Path of elevation chosen by free will rather than necessitating death. Would you like to travel now? Thragg's brush lowered slightly as he looked at the interface with an expression that might have been confusion, an expression few had ever seen on the Emperor's face. He murmured softly, the sound barely audible even in the quiet room. Royal General Craig's POV, I stand atop Mount Everest, gazing down at the world that has changed so dramatically in the past 7 months. The castle of Viltrum rises behind me, its architecture a perfect blend of our traditional designs and Earth's aesthetic sensibilities, another example of the Emperor's vision for true integration. The wind whips around me, though I barely notice it. My thoughts are focused on the reports I'll need to deliver when the Emperor returns. The breeding program has exceeded all projections, over 3,000 successful pregnancies, each carefully monitored and supported with the finest medical care both worlds can provide. It's strange, really. After millennia of conquest, of seeing worlds as nothing but resources to be harvested, this new approach still takes adjustment. The humans aren't just breeding stock, they're partners in the Empire's future. Their volunteers are treated with respect and given status and privileges that would have been unthinkable in the old days. Don't get me wrong, we did treat conquered races with care, but never to this extent. Penny for your thoughts, General. I turned to find Cecil Stedman approaching, his ever-present sunglasses reflecting the mountain sunset. Director Stedman, I acknowledge with a slight nod. I didn't expect you until our evening meeting. Well, when you've got a teleporter that isn't as expensive to use now thanks to our Viltrumite overlords, scheduling becomes a bit more flexible. His tone carries that familiar dry humor that I've come to understand isn't disrespect, but rather his way of processing our new reality. I gesture for him to join me at the observation point. We've developed something of a routine over these months, regular meetings to discuss Earth's integration into the Empire, which often evolve into more personal conversations. The latest medical reports are promising, I inform him, though I know he's already aware. The human Viltrumite hybrids are developing at an accelerated rate, yet showing none of the complications we initially feared. And the mothers? Cecil asks, his tone carefully neutral. Healthy. Happy, even. I can't keep a note of surprise from my voice. They speak of feeling valued, protected. Many have formed genuine bonds with their Viltrumite partners. Cecil's lips twitch in what might be a smile. Amazing what treating people with respect can accomplish, isn't it? I grunt in acknowledgement, remembering my own initial skepticism about the Emperor's methods to treat Earth with so much more care compared to other worlds. It is not how we would have done things in the past. Not to this extent. No kidding. I've read the histories you shared. Your usual approach was more conquer first, ask questions never. Cecil adjusts his sunglasses. Speaking of changes in approach, how's the ego holding up now that you're not the Emperor's personal barber anymore? The question catches me off guard. For millennia, I had indeed been the only one trusted to maintain the Emperor's appearance, a privilege that spoke to the deep trust between us. Roberta has proven adequate in the task, I reply, trying to maintain my dignity. Her molecular manipulation abilities allow for greater precision than traditional methods. Aha. Cecil's tone suggests he's not buying my attempted nonchalance. And the fact that she practically glows every time she gets to run her fingers through his hair has nothing to do with it? The Emperor's personal matters are not for discussion, I state, still feeling a bit uncomfortable imagining the Emperor in any way, dare I say, in my private thoughts, soft. Of course not, Cecil agrees, though his smirk suggests otherwise. After a moment, his expression grows more serious. You miss him, don't you? The question hangs in the air between us. In all my millennia of service, I've never been separated from Thragg for this long. Even during the darkest days after the plague, he was always there, leading us, guiding us. He is the Emperor, I say finally. His presence or absence does not affect my duty. That's not what I asked, Craig. Cecil's use of my name without title, something he's begun doing in our private conversations, carries a weight of understanding. You've been by his side for what, thousands of years? Been his advisor, his confidant, his friend, even if neither of you would use that word. I remain silent, but Cecil continues, his voice carrying unexpected gentleness. It's okay to admit you miss someone you care about, you know. Even terrifying Viltrumite generals are allowed to have feelings. We do not. I begin, then stop, reconsidering. These months on Earth have taught me much about the value of honesty, particularly with oneself. Yes, I miss his presence. The Empire functions as commanded, but it is different without him here. Cecil nods, understanding in his expression. Well, if it helps, I'm pretty sure he misses having you around too. Can't imagine anyone else to be nearly as good at taking orders or trimming that magnificent mustache. Despite myself, I feel my lips curve in what might be a smile. The Emperor's mustache is a matter of galactic security, Director. I trust you'll treat that observation with appropriate discretion. Oh, absolutely, Cecil agrees, his voice dripping with mock seriousness. Wouldn't want any rival empires learning the secret of proper Viltrumite grooming techniques. Could destabilize the entire cosmic balance. We stand in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set. It's still strange to me, this easy companionship with a human. Yet in Cecil, I found someone who understands the weight of responsibility, the complexity of serving a greater purpose while maintaining one's own principles. That's why something needs to be addressed as I really don't want to have to kill him. I turned to face Cecil directly, my expression growing serious. You need to stop making contingency plans against us. The words hang in the air between us. Cecil doesn't flinch, doesn't deny it, another thing I've come to respect about him. Instead, he removes his sunglasses, revealing the scarred skin around his eyes. You knew? He asks simply. Of course I knew. Just as you knew I knew. I gesture toward the world below us. Your artificial skin requires daily chemical baths we now provide. Did you think we wouldn't analyze their composition? Notice the trace elements that could only come from weapons development. Cecil is quiet for a moment, his fingers absently tracing the scar on his face, the only part of his original skin that survived that long-ago encounter. Old habits die hard, I suppose. Though I'll admit, most of those plans have been gathering dust lately. But not all of them, I press, keeping my voice gentle despite the seriousness of the topic. You still maintain some. Update them. Refine them. Can you blame me? Cecil's voice carries no hostility, just weary pragmatism. I lost most of my skin trying to save people from a nerve gas attack. Had to watch Donald die 30 times doing his duty. Seen too many protectors turn out to be threats. I moved to the reinforced bench we had installed for our meetings, gesturing for him to join me. Tell me something, Cecil. In these 7 months, how many global conflicts have occurred? None, he admits, sitting beside me. And disease rates? Down 78% globally. Cancers practically eradicated in developed nations, making rapid progress elsewhere. Poverty. Reduced by 65% and falling. Cecil sighs. I know what you're doing, Craig. Do you? I turn to face him fully. Because I don't think you do. You're still operating from old patterns, preparing for betrayal, planning for the worst. But you're not seeing what's actually happening. I see plenty, Cecil counters. I see incredible progress, yes. But I also see power concentrated in the hands of beings who could destroy our world on a whim. No, I correct him. You see power concentrated in the hands of beings who could have destroyed your world on a whim but chose not to. Who instead chose the harder path, true integration, true elevation. I pause, choosing my next words carefully. You know why the Emperor appointed me to oversee Earth while he's away? Not just because I'm his most trusted general, but because in all my millennia of service, I've learned to see beyond mere conquest. To understand that true strength isn't just about power, it's about how you use it. Like how you're using it now. Cecil asks, a hint of his usual sardonic humor returning. To lecture your friend about trust issues? The word friend catches me off guard, though I try not to show it. Yes, I reply simply. Because I would rather have this conversation than ever have to implement the contingencies I have planned if you act on yours. That gets his attention. His eyes widen slightly. You have contingencies against my contingencies? Of course. I've been doing this for millennia, Cecil. I allow a small smile. Though I'll admit, yours are impressively creative. The distabilizer hidden in the coffee machine in case of unexpected situations was particularly inspired. You found that one? Cecil actually looks disappointed. I thought I'd masked the energy signature perfectly. You did. But you always prepare your own coffee except when we meet. It wasn't hard to deduce. A moment of silence passes between us, then Cecil starts laughing, a genuine, unguarded sound I've rarely heard from him. After a moment, I join in, the absurdity of our situation hitting home. Look at us, Cecil says finally, wiping his eyes. Two old paranoid bastards, plotting each other's downfall over coffee meetings we both actually enjoy. Indeed. I regard him seriously. Which is why I'm asking you, as someone I've come to respect, to let go of the contingencies. Not because I fear them, but because you don't need them anymore. Cecil studies me for a long moment. You really care, don't you? Not just about the Empire's success, but about this. He gestures between us. Whatever this friendship is. Viltrumites do not traditionally form such bonds, I admit. But perhaps that is one of many traditions worth reconsidering. Cecil is quiet for a long time, looking out over the darkening landscape. Finally, he says, the destabilizer isn't the only thing in that coffee machine, you know. Oh. There's also a very expensive coffee bean grinder. Because somehow, the mighty General Craig has developed a taste for freshly ground Ethiopian beans. I feel my face heat slightly. That information remains classified. Of course. Cecil stands, stretching. I suppose I should start dismantling some of those contingencies. Though I'm keeping the coffee machine. The grinder only, I specify. The destabilizer goes. Deal. He turns to step away a bit before teleporting away, then pauses. Craig. Thank you. For caring enough to have this conversation instead of just eliminating the threat I might pose. Yes, well, I reply gruffly. It would be inconvenient to train another human to properly appreciate good coffee. Cecil's laughter echoes back, and I allow myself a small smile. Though before Cecil can take more than a few steps, both our communicators activate simultaneously. The distinctive chime of an Imperial priority message fills the air. I raise my wrist, activating the holographic display. Cecil does the same with his GDA device, technology we'd shared during the integration. The Emperor's message is characteristically brief and direct. Assemble the Guardians of the Globe, Team, Lucan, Anissa, and yourselves in the throne room immediately. Changes approach that requires a witness. Cecil and I exchange glances. There's something in the Emperor's tone, a subtle difference that only those who know him well might notice. Well, Cecil says, adjusting his sunglasses, I guess dismantling those contingencies will have to wait. Indeed. I pause, then add, though perhaps you should leave the coffee machine behind for this meeting. Spoil sport. Cecil's lips twitch in a slight smile. Shall we gather the children? I raise an eyebrow at his characterization of Earth's mightiest heroes as children, though I can't entirely disagree. After millennia of existence, most beings do seem young in comparison. You contact your teams, I decide. I'll inform Lucan and Anissa. As we turn to our respective tasks, Cecil glances back at me. Craig. Whatever's coming, we're good, right? The question carries more weight than its casual delivery suggests. After our previous conversation about trust and contingencies, this is him offering something, perhaps not quite a surrender of his plans, but a step toward it. Yes, Cecil, I reply, allowing some warmth to enter my tone. We're good, as you humans say. Now hurry, the Emperor does not appreciate delays. Sure thing, old friend, Cecil says, already activating his communications array. Though I'm keeping that coffee grinder. The grinder only, I remind him, my own lips curving slightly as I reach out to contact my fellow Viltrumites. Whatever changes the Emperor brings, at least I know I won't have to kill my friend today. Though I might have to confiscate that coffee machine eventually. Just to be safe. The crimson portal swirled before them, its energy pattern unlike anything good Angstrom Levy had ever encountered in his extensive multiversal travels. This wasn't just a tier between realities within their multiverse. This was something more fundamental, more primal. Fascinating, he muttered, his scientific curiosity overriding his usual reverence for the Emperor. The dimensional frequency operates on a completely different wavelength than standard multiversal travel. It's as if it's accessing a higher order of reality entirely. Thragg stood before the portal, studying the interface only he could see floating before him. Universal travel, status, activated. Current available world, My Hero Academia. World level, lower access granted through mission completion. Worlds chosen, original Mark Grayson, successfully aligned. Travel parameters, maximum initial companions, 8. Note, limit removed upon world conquest. Some worlds may allow more/less pre-conquest. Companions coming with are incapable of thinking of betrayal without the user being notified. This does not apply to all worlds, but it does to this one. Power restrictions. In lower worlds, power levels will for all be restricted to match near or at the world's peak. Physical abilities will scale to the strongest physical force for the user, as the user will be the world's peak, while companions, if taken, will be restricted to a level below the user. Special abilities will manifest equivalent to the strongest ability user. Note: restrictions are necessary for world stability. Current world mission, primary objective: secure or eliminate the world's chosen duo. Requirements: must genuinely attempt to convince both hero and villain. Elimination only permitted after confirmation of absolute rejection. Premature elimination will result in dimensional lock. Note: success grants access to the next world or return travel. The structure of reality itself seems to bend around this portal, Levy continued, his hands moving through complex gestures as he analyzed the energy patterns. It's as if something beyond our multiverse is reaching down, creating pathways that shouldn't be possible. Beyond our multiverse, Thragg mused, his deep voice thoughtful. Yes. That would explain much. The interface flickered, providing additional details about his destination. World details, setting, Society of Quirk users. Primary targets: chosen hero, Izuku Midoriya. Chosen villain, Tamura Shigaraki. Note: both must be approached with genuine intent for recruitment before any lethal action. Emperor, Levy said, finally tearing his attention away from the portal's mesmerizing energy patterns. This is extraordinary. My own dimensional travel abilities can access perhaps a few thousand alternate realities within our multiverse. But this is reaching into entirely separate multiverses. Different narrative structures entirely. Thragg's eyes remained fixed on the crimson portal, his response measured and deliberate. Knowledge of this power comes to me through instinct, nothing more. But my instincts. He paused, his voice carrying absolute certainty, have never led me astray. Levy's eyes widened with growing reverence. Of course, he breathed, his voice trembling with emotion. Of course. This is beyond mere science, beyond even my understanding of the multiverse. This is divine providence. He spread his arms wide, his usual scientific detachment giving way to almost religious fervor. I've searched countless realities, Emperor, looking for someone worthy of reshaping existence itself. And now the very fabric of reality confirms what I believed. You truly are chosen by God himself. His voice rose with passionate conviction. These aren't just portals to other dimensions. They're gateways to worlds I could never access, realms beyond my greatest reach. This is confirmation. Validation. The universe itself, no, God himself acknowledges your right to rule. The sound of wheels on polished floor interrupted Levy's exultation. War-torn Eve appeared, pushed in her wheelchair by Royal Eve, with Original Eve walking beside them. Royal Mark and Original Mark followed close behind, their expressions curious. Dad. War-torn Eve called softly, her voice carrying both question and trust. What's happening? What is that? Royal Eve's hand squeezed her counterpart's shoulder gently. That energy, it's unlike anything I've ever sensed before. Thragg turned to face them, his massive frame silhouetted against the crimson swirl of the portal. Patience, he commanded, though his tone softened as it always did when addressing his daughters. We will wait for the others before explanations begin. Others? Original Mark asked, his eyes fixed on the portal with a mixture of wariness and fascination. The Guardians of the Globe, Teen Team, Lucan, Anissa, Craig, Conquest, your father, Cecil, Amanda, and Roberta. Thragg listed. All must witness what comes next. Something's changing, isn't it? Royal Mark observed, stepping closer to Eve. Something big. Yes, Thragg confirmed simply. The next phase of elevation begins today. As if summoned by Thragg's words, the others began arriving. The Guardians of the Globe filed in first, followed by the Teen Team. Lucan and Anissa appeared together, their expressions curious. Craig and Cecil entered deep in conversation, while Conquest took his usual position near Thragg. Amanda and Roberta arrived last, both immediately moving to stand near the Emperor. My instincts have bestowed me knowledge of a world, Thragg began without preamble, his deep voice carrying across the chamber. A world where power manifests differently than our own, through abilities they call quirks. Almost everyone is born with one because of their genetics. It's a world that requires guidance. He gestured to the Crimson Portal. This gateway will take us there, though my power will be limited to match their strongest. A necessary restriction for their reality's stability. And the mission? Cecil asked, his tone carefully neutral. To elevate their world, Thragg replied. Through either conversion or elimination of their chosen hero and villain. Though I feel that this ability, however I have obtained it, has the restriction of elimination only being permitted after genuine attempts at recruitment. I'm going with you, war-torn Eve declared suddenly, her voice trembling but determined. Already thinking of the implications of him leaving her, of being alone again without him, at the edges of her vision and hearing the sight of Darkmark and his voice creeping in at the thought. You can't leave me behind, Dad. You can't. Her breathing began to quicken, the edges of panic creeping into her expression. Royal Eve immediately placed a calming hand on her shoulder, but war-torn Eve's eyes remained fixed on Thragg, desperate and pleading. Thragg moved to kneel beside her wheelchair, his massive frame somehow making the gesture look graceful. Daughter, he said softly, it could be dangerous. Please, she whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. I can't be without your protection again. Please, Dad. Thragg studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. You will come. If she is going, Roberta stepped forward, her analytical mind already working, then it would be logical for Amanda and myself to accompany you as well. A family unit would provide excellent cover. Husband, wives, and daughter. I can establish identities and create a background that would withstand scrutiny. I want to go too, Original Mark declared suddenly, causing several heads to turn in surprise. I've chosen this path. I want to see it through. Thragg felt a subtle pulse from the interface, confirmation that Original Mark's decision had indeed been what allowed this journey to become possible. Before he could respond, Royal Mark and Eve stepped forward as well. We're coming too, Royal Mark stated firmly, Royal Eve nodding beside him. As am I, Nolan announced, moving to stand beside his son and counterpart. I cannot in good conscience allow my sons, to venture into another multiverse without me. Debbie will understand. Original Eve stepped forward next, her hand finding Original Mark's. Where Mark goes, I go, she said simply. Amanda, who had been studying the group dynamics with interest, spoke up. You know, this could actually work really well, she stated with a hint of excitement coming into her voice. Think about it. Thragg has triplet daughters, she gestured to the Eves. Nolan has twin sons, she indicated the Marks, and Roberta can pose as the Eve's biological mother. In a world of superpowers, something that keeps you young for a while wouldn't be out of place, right? Thragg considered this. The cover story was logical, would explain their family dynamics, and would allow them to move freely in this new world while maintaining their true connections. The maximum number of companions is 8, he stated, though his tone suggested he was working through the problem rather than rejecting the idea. Then it's perfect, isn't it? Amanda declared confidently. Having a strong family unit would make converting their chosen hero and villain easier, wouldn't it? Show them what they could be part of. Thragg surveyed the assembled group, his expression resolute. Craig, he commanded, his voice carrying imperial authority, you will oversee the continued integration of both our empire and the newly secured reality. Work with Angstrom to establish stable pathways between the worlds. Yes, Emperor, Craig acknowledged with a formal bow. Cecil, Thragg continued, maintain coordination between both versions of the Global Defense Agency. Your experience with parallel operations will be vital. Cecil nodded, adjusting his sunglasses. I assume you want the integration to be as smooth as the first one? Precisely. Lucan, Anissa, you will assist in training the new hybrid children from both realities. Their development must not falter in my absence. The two Viltrumites saluted in acknowledgement. Guardians, Teen Team, continue your duties as protectors, but now across both Earths. The Empire expands, and with it, your responsibilities. Thragg's gaze swept across the assembled heroes, his presence commanding absolute attention. Remember, we do not merely conquer. We elevate. Ensure both worlds understand this. Turning to those who would accompany him, his tone shifted slightly. Prepare what you need. We depart in 1 hour. Pack light, we will acquire what we need in this new world. As the groups dispersed to their various tasks, Thragg remained before the crimson portal, its swirling energies casting strange shadows across his features. The battle beast coat rippled slightly in an unfelt breeze, the white fur seeming to absorb and reflect the portal's crimson glow. He stood alone now, contemplating the gateway to another universe entirely. His instincts hummed with certainty. This was right, this was necessary. The next step in his grand design for universal elevation. The next step in his people's evolution. A world of heroes and villains awaited. A world that needed guidance, needed structure, needed him. The portal pulsed, as if responding to his thoughts. Soon, very soon, a new reality would know the Emperor's touch. And this was only the beginning. The private meeting room deep within the Global Defense Agency headquarters was filled with tension. The Guardians of the Globe sat around a circular table, their expressions ranging from thoughtful to troubled as they processed the implications of Thragg's imminent departure. War Woman's battle axe lay across her lap, her fingers drumming restlessly against its handle. The rhythmic tapping was the only sound in the room until she finally broke the heavy silence. "Why did you stop me?" she demanded, her fierce gaze fixed on the immortal. "When I started to step forward, you grabbed my arm. Held me back. We could have what?" The immortal interrupted, his ancient eyes carrying millennia of wisdom. "Gotten ourselves killed? Or worse, revealed your potential disloyalty for nothing." "Nothing." War Woman's voice rose with indignation. "This might be our only chance. He said himself his powers will be limited in this other world. If we could just convince him to let us come along, we could plan, could what?" The immortal's tone carried equal measures of patience and exasperation. "Could we try to kill a being who, even at a fraction of his current power, would still be able to crush us like insects? Are you truly that eager for death?" Red Rush vibrated nervously in his seat. "Maybe she has a point, though. I mean, if he's really going to be weakened." "You're all fools," the immortal declared. "Do none of you realize this could have been a test? A way to identify who might harbor thoughts of rebellion?" The other Guardians fell silent, exchanging uncertain glances as they considered this possibility. "Think," the immortal continued. "Why announce his weakness? Why gather us all to witness his departure? He's many things, but stupid isn't one of them." Darkwing leaned forward, his cape rustling softly. "So what are you suggesting?" His gravelly voice carried a note of challenge. "That we simply accept this? Accept Earth being part of the Viltrum Empire forever? You've lived longer than any of us and fought longer than any of us. Are you truly content with this situation?" "Yes," the immortal replied without hesitation, surprising everyone present. "I am." "What?" War Woman's grip tightened on her axe. "How can you say that? After everything we've fought for?" The immortal's expression softened slightly. "What have we fought for, truly? Look at what we've achieved in the past 7 months under Viltrum's rule. Global peace. Disease rates are plummeting. Poverty is being systematically eliminated. Technologies are advancing at unprecedented rates." He gestured toward the window, where the sun was setting over a peaceful city. "I've lived for thousands of years. I've seen empires rise and fall and seen countless attempts at creating utopia. All of them failed because they lacked the power to enforce their ideals and the strength to maintain order across vast territories." "But this isn't freedom," Green Ghost protested, her translucent form shifting with agitation. "It's control, no matter how benevolent it seems." "Freedom." The immortal's laugh held no humor. "What freedom did the world have before? Freedom to starve? Freedom to die of preventable diseases? Freedom to be exploited by the wealthy and powerful?" He stood, pacing the length of the conference room. "I've watched humanity struggle for millennia. Watched them make the same mistakes over and over again. Wars, genocide, environmental destruction, all in the name of freedom." Martianman spoke up. "But surely self-determination has value? The right to choose one's own path, even if that path leads to mistakes. And who truly had that right before?" The immortal challenged. "The poor? The sick? The oppressed? No freedom was always an illusion for most of humanity. At least under Thragg's rule, there's genuine progress. Real improvement in people's lives. Aquarius shifted uncomfortably in his specially designed chair. You sound like you admire him. I do, the immortal admitted. Not for his power alone, but for how he uses it. He doesn't just conquer, he elevates. He doesn't just rule, he improves. Everything he promised, he's delivered. War Woman slammed her fist on the table. Listen to yourself. You're talking about a tyrant who's taken over our world. I'm talking about someone who's done more to improve human life in 7 months than we managed in decades of heroics, the immortal countered. Yes, he's a tyrant. Yes, he's a conqueror. But he's also exactly what this world needed, someone with both the power and the wisdom to enforce positive change. The door to the conference room opened with a soft hiss, revealing Cecil Stedman. His ever-present sunglasses reflected the room's lighting as he stepped inside, his timing almost too perfect to be coincidental. He's right, you know, Cecil said, moving to stand beside the immortal. Every word. War Woman's eyes narrowed. You too, Cecil? I thought if anyone would fight against this, it would be you. Fight against what? Cecil asked, removing his sunglasses to reveal his scarred eyes. Against actual, measurable improvement? Against genuine progress? Against a system that's actually working? Red Rush leaned forward, his form vibrating with nervous energy. So what are you both saying? That we should help him? Help Thragg conquer other worlds, other realities. The immortal and Cecil exchanged a long look, years of understanding passing between them in that silent moment. Finally, they turned back to face the group. Yes, they said in unison, their conviction evident in their voices. If that's what's necessary, Cecil continued. If that's what it takes to spread this improvement for other innocent people. You can't be serious, Green Ghost whispered. Dead serious, the immortal confirmed. Because as I've said now 1,000,000 times, I've seen what happens when worlds are left to their own devices. When they're allowed to make the same mistakes over and over again. Darkwing's eyes narrowed beneath his cowl. So that's why you two have been so close lately. Having private meetings, sharing long conversations. Who convinced whom? Was it you, Cecil? Did you turn our leader into a willing collaborator? A small, knowing smile touched the immortal's lips. Actually, he said, it was the other way around. You. War Woman's voice carried disbelief. Did you convince Cecil? It wasn't easy, Cecil admitted, replacing his sunglasses. I'm naturally suspicious, naturally resistant to authority. But. He gestured toward the window, toward the peaceful city beyond. Results are hard to argue with. And the immortal, he helped me see the bigger picture. The bigger picture? Martianman questioned. Again, think about it, the immortal said. Really think. We've spent our lives fighting symptoms, crime, disasters, invasions. But Thragg? He addresses causes. He doesn't just stop wars, he creates a system where war becomes impossible. He doesn't just fight poverty, he restructures society to eliminate it entirely. And that's worth giving up our freedom? Aquarius demanded. Seriously, you all preach about freedom, but what freedom? Cecil countered. The freedom to watch people suffer? The freedom to fail over and over again? The freedom to know we could never really fix anything permanently. He moved to the window, his reflection overlaying the cityscape beyond. I've spent my entire career trying to protect humanity. Making hard choices, crossing lines when necessary. And you know what? Just like with all of you, Thragg has accomplished more in 7 months than I managed in my entire life. So yes, the immortal concluded, his ancient eyes carrying absolute certainty. If he needs our help to spread this to other worlds, other realities, we'll help. Because it's the right thing to do. Because it's necessary. War Woman suddenly slammed her hands on the table, rising with such force that her chair clattered to the floor behind her. Her face was contorted with rage and disgust. I can't listen to any more of this, she snarled. You're traitors, both of you. Traitors to everything we've ever stood for. She stormed toward the door, her battle axe gripped tightly in her white-knuckled hand. Red Rush started to rise, preparing to follow her, but Darkwing's gravelly voice cut through the tension. "Let her go," he said quietly. "She needs time to cool off. We all do." As the door slammed behind War Woman, Darkwing leaned forward, his cowl casting deep shadows across his face. "But there's something we need to address. You both clearly support Thragg. I won't argue against that anymore. And yes, even I can't deny the improvements he's brought." His voice dropped lower, more serious. "But we all know what he's capable of. His ruthlessness. His capacity for destruction. If necessary, he would obliterate entire worlds. So what's your plan to keep our Emperor's empathy present? To prevent him from losing the very qualities that make his rule beneficial?" The Immortal and Cecil exchanged glances, a heavy silence falling over the room. Finally, Cecil approached the table, placing his hands flat on its surface. "First," he said, his voice carrying deadly seriousness, "we need to protect certain people. At all costs. Even with our lives if necessary. Because they're the key to everything. They're the ones who dashed the Crimson Portal pulsed with otherworldly energy as 9 figures stood before it, ready for departure." Thragg's battle beast coat rippled in the energy winds, while war-torn Eve sat in her wheelchair, gripping its arms nervously. Roberta adjusted a small bag at her hip, the weight of gold bars within providing reassurance. "A contingency," she explained to Amanda's questioning look. "In case our powers prove insufficient for creating resources in this new world." Thragg stepped forward, his massive frame commanding attention. "Remember," his deep voice carried across the chamber, "we enter this world not merely as conquerors, but as guides. As elevators of potential. What we do here will set the pattern for all worlds to come." He surveyed the group, the Mark standing tall and determined, the Eves united, Amanda and Roberta ready to support his vision, and Nolan prepared to help shape a new world like he prepared for this one. "Together," Thragg declared, "we will show this world, and all worlds, what true elevation means. Are you ready?" 8 heads nodded in unified response. "Then let us begin." With those words, they stepped through the portal, crossing the threshold into another reality entirely. The crimson energy swirled around them, and then they were gone, leaving their world behind as they ventured forth to reshape another. The games had begun. The rain fell in heavy sheets over Mizudafu, Japan, transforming the narrow alleyway into a miniature river between weathered brick walls. Security cameras hung lifeless at both ends, their circuits temporarily frozen by an electromagnetic pulse caused by the soon-to-be existing portal that had preceded their arrival. Soon enough a crimson portal materialized in the space between buildings, its otherworldly light casting strange shadows through the falling rain. 9 figures emerged, led by Thragg's imposing frame, his battle beast coat seeming to drink in both darkness and rain. War-torn Eve's wheelchair was guided carefully by Royal Eve while a pink energy bubble formed around them, protecting the group from the downpour. Roberta immediately activated her contingency systems. Nanomachines flowed from concealed compartments in her clothing, assembling themselves into her familiar robot avatar. The transformation took less than 3 seconds, a testament to technology far beyond this world's capabilities. Her mechanical fingers extended, interfacing with hidden ports that emerged from her forearms. Quantum processors activated, sending out invisible tendrils of code that slipped through this reality's digital defenses like ghosts through walls. First, she accessed the local wireless networks, primitive by her standards, but functional. Banking systems, government databases, social media platforms, all laid bare before her advanced infiltration protocols. She moved through them with surgical precision, leaving no trace of her presence. "Fascinating architecture," she murmured, her mechanical voice pitched low. "Their cybersecurity is quaint. Almost charming in its simplicity." Her systems branched out further, tapping into satellite networks, police databases, and hero registration systems. Each new connection added to her growing understanding of this world's infrastructure. "The Hero Public Safety Commission's databases are particularly interesting," she noted, processing terabytes of information in milliseconds, having already gotten a slight briefing alongside the rest about heroes and villains in this world from Thragg. "Their encryption is several decades behind our Earth standards. Accessing, analyzing, mapping social structures and power hierarchies. The emergence of quirks fundamentally reshaped human society," Roberta continued, holographic displays shifting to show historical footage. The first recorded quirk appeared in Qing City, a luminescent infant. Within a few generations, the supernatural became natural. Thragg listened silently, comparing her findings to memories from his first life, memories of an anime series he'd once watched. Everything aligned perfectly, for now, that is. I've established secure false identities for all of us, Roberta announced after several minutes. Bank accounts, medical histories, educational records, everything we'll need to integrate seamlessly. The system accepts them as if they've always existed. She paused, her mechanical head tilting slightly. I've also located several potential properties we could acquire. One in particular, a recently renovated compound in a quiet district, would suit our needs perfectly. Previous owner, deceased, no heirs, currently in legal limbo. Easy to acquire through proper channels. However, she continued without pause, ever the efficient one, there's a potential problem with our current cover story. Her mechanical fingers danced through new data streams. 2 adopted brothers with similar powers, adopted daughters with remarkable abilities, multiple romantic partners all possessing significant quirks. It would draw unwanted attention. This world has its own version of paranoid watchdogs. What do you suggest? Nolan asked, all of them already used to Roberta giving no pause till she wants to when she is explaining something, standing beside his sons as rain drummed against their protective bubble. Roberta's mechanical avatar straightened. I can alter our genetics. Make the connections real, not just cover stories. Thragg and you, true brothers. The Eves, biological daughters of Thragg and myself. Our appearances wouldn't change, phenotype remains distinct from genotype, but any investigation would find genuine biological connections. When did you even come up with this plan? Amanda asked, immediately realizing that this can't be something she's thought of at just this moment, her eyes narrowing slightly. And more importantly, why didn't you do this before we left? Roberta's mechanical form shifted slightly, something almost like pride entering her synthesized voice. I've had contingency plans prepared for every possible scenario since the moment I pledged myself to the Emperor's service. Nothing less is acceptable when serving one chosen by existence itself to reshape all realities. She turned to face each of them in turn. I've analyzed thousands of potential scenarios and calculated millions of possible outcomes. This solution presented the highest probability of success with minimal risk. But her mechanical head tilted slightly. I wanted to wait until we arrived here to present it, to ensure everyone's decision would be based on immediate necessity rather than abstract possibility. You really have thought of everything, haven't you? Royal Mark observed, a note of admiration in his voice. Of course, Roberta replied simply. The Emperor deserves nothing less than absolute dedication to perfection. But her tone shifted slightly, becoming more gentle. While I've calculated this as the optimal solution, the choice must be yours. All of yours. Silence filled the area as everyone thought about Roberta's words. War-torn Eve was the first to speak up. Yes. I can't speak for everyone else, nor Dad, but I would be okay with it. Her voice was a bit hesitant at first, but soon more determined as the words flowed out. Amanda stepped forward. Makes sense to me. Better to have real proof backing our story than trying to maintain a lie. She crossed her arms, adding with characteristic directness. Plus, it'll make things a hell of a lot easier moving forward. I mean, it's definitely the smart play, Original Mark chimed in, though it's kind of wild to think about, right? Actually becoming biological family. Royal Eve's response carried her usual confidence, tinged with strategic consideration. The tactical advantages are obvious. And honestly, her expression softened slightly as she glanced at War-torn Eve. Some of us have already found what we were looking for in this family. Original Eve herself remained silent for a moment. She herself was the one with the least connection to Thragg, yet she was the one who decided to tag along, and having seen how he treated her counterparts, she simply nodded, her agreement silent but no less sure. Nolan stepped forward. A Viltrumite's word is his bond, he stated. We've already chosen to be family. Making it biological only strengthens what already exists. Yeah, what Dad said, Royal Mark agreed, his voice carrying that hint of pride he'd inherited from both his realities. Though I gotta admit, being actual cousins is going to take some getting used to, he added with a grin at Original Mark. War-torn Eve's fingers tightened slightly on her wheelchair's armrests. Dad? She asked softly, looking up at Thragg. What do you think? The Emperor remained silent for a moment, his massive frame still as the rain continued to fall around their protective bubble. This alteration, Thragg spoke finally, would make me truly Argal's son. What effect would this have on my power? Roberta's mechanical form straightened, her response immediate and precise. Based on historical records and your own accounts, Emperor, Argal's bloodline was the purest in Viltrum's history. The genetic enhancement would likely increase your already formidable strength. How? Original Mark asked, his natural curiosity overcoming his usual reserve around Thragg. I mean, isn't he already the strongest there is? The Emperor's current power comes from his unprecedented control over smart atoms, Nolan explained. He's an anomaly, born with abilities beyond even our understanding. Exactly, Roberta confirmed. Adding Argal's pure bloodline to that natural talent would only enhance what's already there. Think of it as optimizing an already perfect system. Like upgrading something that's already the best? Royal Mark suggested, trying to grasp the concept. More like completing what was always meant to be, Thragg stated, his voice carrying unusual depth. Argal raised me as his son. Now I would truly be his heir, in blood as well as spirit. War-torn Eve looked up at him with understanding in her eyes. It means something to you, doesn't it, Dad? Beyond just the power. Thragg's massive hand rested gently on her shoulder, his response more in that gesture than in his words. Yes. Then I say we do it, Amanda declared with complete surety. Make what should be real, real. Proceed, Thragg commanded, his decision made. The battle beast coat seemed to shift slightly, as if responding to its wearer's anticipation. Roberta's pink energy enveloped them, and for a moment, all there was rose light. The observation room at UA University hummed with activity as faculty members monitored dozens of screens displaying the entrance exam in progress. Principal Nizu sat at the center, his small paws folded neatly on the console before him, beady eyes missing nothing despite his pleasant demeanor. Quite the crop of candidates this year, he remarked, taking a sip from his teacup. Several standouts already. Shota Aizawa, better known as the pro-hero Eraserhead, leaned against the wall, his bloodshot eyes scanning the monitors with practiced efficiency. His disheveled appearance belied the sharp intelligence that had made him one of UA's most respected professors. Four in particular, he muttered, drawing the attention of present Mike beside him. Yeah, the voice hero exclaimed with characteristic enthusiasm. Those Grayson kids are something else. Talk about plus ultra. Midnight adjusted her glasses, leaning forward to get a better view of the monitor showing a young man with dark hair systematically dismantling a three-pointer robot with astonishing precision. Marcus Grayson, Royal Mark, correct? His technique is impressive. As is his twin brothers, Cementos added, gesturing to another screen where a nearly identical young man was protecting a group of examinees from falling debris. Mark, Original Mark, seems to favor defense over offense, though both possess remarkable strength. Nizu's whiskers twitched with interest. And the young women? The triplet cousins, I believe. Evelyn, Royal Eve, and Eva Grayson, Original Eve, Aizawa supplied, pulling up their files on his tablet. Cousins to the twins. All four demonstrating exceptional abilities. I've pulled their files, he continued, scrolling through the information. The Grayson family, interesting background. The other teachers gathered closer as Aizawa began to read. Nolan Grayson, father to the twins. Former athlete and martial artist with a powerful strength-based quirk. Never pursued hero work despite his abilities. His wife, Debbie, died in a villain attack years ago when the twins were young. He works as a travel writer now. Aizawa scrolled to the next page. Thragg Grayson, Nolan's older brother and father to the three girls. Former military, forced into early retirement due to injuries. His quirk is similar to his brother's but reportedly more difficult to control. The family has largely kept to themselves, avoiding public attention. Tragic about the mother, Recovery Girl commented softly. Perhaps it explains the boy's determination. Says here the twins' quirks manifested late, Aizawa continued, his eyebrows raising slightly. A genetic condition that delayed their abilities until they reached physical maturity. Interesting. That would explain why they haven't appeared on our radar before now, Vlad King noted, crossing his muscular arms. But they certainly make up for lost time. Indeed, Nizu agreed, turning his attention back to the monitors. Let's observe their performance more closely. In Testing Ground Beta, Marcus Grayson moved through the urban landscape. Standing at 6 feet 0 inches with a powerful build, his dark hair cut short and precise, he presented an imposing figure even among the diverse examinees. His navy blue training outfit, custom-made to accommodate his muscular frame, bore subtle reinforcements at stress points. A two-pointer robot crashed through a building ahead, targeting a group of panicking candidates. Without breaking stride, Marcus accelerated, his speed increasing to blur his movement. He intercepted the robot mid-charge. His fist connected with its central processor in a single strike. The machine collapsed in a shower of sparks, its momentum completely arrested. "Are you all right?" he asked the examinees, his voice carrying a natural authority that made several of them straighten instinctively. "Why yes," a young woman with vine-like hair stammered. "Thank you." Marcus nodded once, already scanning for his next target. "Stay together. Watch each other's backs." With that advice delivered, he launched himself toward a cluster of robots cornering another examinee. 76 points already, President Mike whistled. And he's barely breaking a sweat. It's not just his combat prowess, 13 observed. Notice how he's organizing the other examinees, creating impromptu teams. That's leadership potential. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. He's holding back. Significantly. You think so? Midnight asked. I know so, Aizawa replied. Watch his movements. Too controlled, too precise. He's deliberately limiting his speed and strength to appear impressive but not suspicious. Nizu nodded thoughtfully. Very astute, Aizawa. Let's check on his brother. In Testing Ground Delta, Mark Grayson presented a slightly different approach. Physically identical to his twin but wearing a forest green training outfit, he moved through the exam with a more defensive strategy. Currently, he stood before a group of 5 examinees, his arms spread wide as 3 robots converged on their position. Stay behind me, he instructed calmly, his stance solid as granite. The first robot, a 3-pointer, launched a mechanical appendage toward the group. Mark caught it midair, the impact driving him back several inches but no further. With a grunt of effort, he yanked the robot forward, using its momentum to swing it into its companions. All 3 machines collided in a spectacular crash of metal and circuitry. That's 12 more points, a spectacled examinee noted, adjusting his glasses. Your quirk is quite versatile. Mark offered a modest smile. Just trying to help. You should get moving, there are more points to be earned elsewhere. As the group dispersed, Mark turned his attention to a distant sound of distress. Someone needed help, and he wasn't about to ignore that call. Different approach, same effectiveness, Snipe commented, tilting his cowboy hat back. This one's focusing on rescue and defense. Both demonstrating exceptional situational awareness, Ectoplasm added. They're not just fighting robots, they're actively working to minimize collateral damage and protect other examinees. Aizawa scrolled through more information on his tablet. Their quirk is registered simply as Superman, enhanced strength, speed, durability, and flight. Supposedly inherited from their father, though he never used it professionally. Flight? Vlad King questioned. I haven't seen either of them fly yet. As I said, Aizawa replied dryly, they're holding back. Nizu tapped a button, switching the main display to Testing Ground Gamma. Let's check on the cousins. Evelyn Grayson moved through Testing Ground Gamma with graceful precision. Her long auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her athletic frame clothed in a pink and white training outfit that allowed for maximum mobility. Unlike her cousin's direct approach, Evelyn employed a more tactical strategy. Pink energy emanated from her hands as she faced down a cluster of robots. She manipulated the molecular structure of the ground beneath them, creating a sinkhole that trapped the machine's lower extremities. Once immobilized, she systematically dismantled them with targeted energy blasts. Impressive quirk, commented a floating set of clothes, presumably a student with an invisibility quirk. How does it work? Molecular manipulation, Evelyn explained, already scanning for her next target. I can alter the structure of matter, within limits. A scream cut through the air, drawing her attention to a purple-haired examinee trapped beneath fallen debris. Without hesitation, Evelyn rushed over, her hands glowing as she carefully manipulated the concrete's molecular structure, making it light enough to lift. You're safe now, she assured the young man as she helped him to his feet. Can you walk? Why yes, he stammered, clearly impressed. Thank you. I'm Hitoshi Shinso. Evelyn Grayson, she replied with a warm smile. Stay safe, Hitoshi. As she turned to continue the exam, Evelyn's expression shifted to one of focused determination. There were still points to earn and people to help. They needed to stick to her father's plan. In testing Ground Alpha, Eva Grayson demonstrated yet another approach. Her strawberry blonde hair cut in a practical bob, she wore a light blue training outfit that complemented her lithe, athletic build. Where Evelyn used precision, Eva employed versatility. A pink aura surrounded her as she faced a 6-robot ambush. Rather than engaging them directly, she created constructs of solid energy, first a shield to deflect their attacks, then a massive hammer that she wielded with surprising skill for someone her size. Behind you, she called to a spiky-haired blonde examinee who was focused on a robot in front of him. The young man turned just in time to see a 2-pointer lunging. Before he could react, Eva had interposed a pink energy barrier between them. The robot crashed against it, momentarily stunned. Thanks for the save, the blonde called out, his hands sparking with small explosions as he blasted the disoriented robot. Eva nodded, already moving to her next target. Unlike her cousins, who seemed to calculate each move, she fought with an adaptable fluidity, changing tactics moment by moment as the situation demanded. The molecular manipulation abilities of these girls are extraordinary, Power Loader commented, stroking his chin thoughtfully. I'd love to have either of them in the support department. Their application specifically requested the hero course, Nizu replied, sipping his tea. And based on their performance, I'd say they're well suited for it. Aizawa continued reading from their files. Evelyn and Eva Grayson, along with their sister Samantha, War-Torn Eve, who isn't applying. All three are Thragg Grayson's daughters. Their quirks are registered as matter manipulation, the ability to control and reshape matter at the molecular level, with slightly different specializations. The family resemblance in their quirks is remarkable, Recovery Girl noted. Both sets of siblings with such powerful abilities. Perhaps too remarkable, Aizawa muttered, paranoid person that he is, instinctively feeling wrongness in this whole situation, though only Nizu seemed to catch his words. The principal's beady eyes gleamed with interest. You suspect something, Aizawa? Before Eraserhead could respond, alarms blared across the monitoring stations. The zero-pointer has been deployed in ground beta, Cementos announced. All eyes turned to the main screen, where the massive robot towered over the urban landscape, sending examinees fleeing in terror. Amidst the chaos in ground beta, a green-haired young man stood frozen, watching as a brown-haired girl lay trapped beneath debris directly in the zero-pointer's path. While other examinees fled, something within him snapped into action. Izuku Midoriya charged forward, power surging through his body as he prepared to use One for All for the first time in combat. With a desperate leap, he soared toward the robot's face, arm cocked back for a devastating punch. Smash! He screamed as his fist connected with the zero-pointer's head, the force of the impact sending shockwaves through the air. The massive machine toppled backward, its systems failing catastrophically as Midoriya began to fall, his arms and legs shattered from the backlash of his own power. Similar scenes played out across the other testing grounds, though with key differences. In Ground Delta, Mark spotted a group of examinees trapped by falling debris as their zero-pointer advanced. Without hesitation, he positioned himself beneath a collapsing building section, his shoulders bearing the immense weight while others escaped. Once they were clear, he carefully set down the debris and turned his attention to those still in danger. In Ground Gamma, Evelyn faced her zero-pointer. Rather than attacking it directly, she manipulated the molecular structure of the ground beneath it, creating a massive sinkhole that trapped the robot's legs. As it struggled to free itself, she focused on evacuating nearby examinees, creating paths through debris with her powers. In Ground Alpha, Eva's approach was more direct but equally effective. She created a series of pink energy platforms in the air, using them to reach the zero-pointer's head level. She then formed a massive energy spear and drove it through the robot's main sensor array, disabling it before creating slides for examinees to evacuate safely. Remarkable, Nizu commented as the faculty watched the four Graysons handle their respective zero-pointers. Each with their own approach, yet all equally effective. And look there, Midnight pointed to another screen. That green-haired boy just sacrificed himself to save another examinee. Izuku Midoriya, Aizawa supplied, pulling up his file. Interesting case. His quirk is registered as superpower, but according to his medical records, he was diagnosed as quirkless until recently. Late bloomer, perhaps? Present Mike suggested. Perhaps, Aizawa replied, though his tone suggested skepticism. The exam is concluding, Nizu announced as a siren sounded across all testing grounds. Shall we review the results? The faculty gathered around the central console as Nizu pulled up the preliminary scores. At the top of the list were four names. First place, Marcus Grayson, 89 villain points, 60 rescue points. Second place, Evelyn Grayson, 76 villain points, 68 rescue points. Third place, Mark Grayson, 72 villain points, 70 rescue points. Fourth place, Eva Grayson, 75 villain points, 65 rescue points. Impressive scores, Vlad King noted. The highest we've seen in years. Izuku Midoriya, Midnight pointed out. 0 villain points, but 60 rescue points for his actions against the zero-pointer. Katsuki Bakugo, Aizawa added. 77 villain points, 0 rescue points. All offense, no rescue work. The faculty continued reviewing the scores, noting standouts like Tenya Ida, Achiko Uraraka, and others who had performed admirably. Now comes the question of class placement, Nizu said, turning to his staff. Thoughts? I want Marcus and Evelyn in Class 1A, Aizawa stated firmly, surprising several of his colleagues with his decisiveness. I want to observe them more closely. Then I'll take Mark and Eva for Class 1B, Vlad King replied. Balance the distribution of talent. Nizu nodded, his paws steepled before him. Very well. The class rosters will be finalized accordingly. As the faculty began to disperse, Aizawa remained behind, still studying the Grayson family files. Something troubling you, Aizawa? Nizu inquired, moving to stand beside him. These four, Aizawa replied, gesturing to the screen still showing the Graysons as they exited their respective testing grounds. Their quirks, their coordination, their strategies, it's all too perfect. Too rehearsed. You suspect deception? I suspect there's more to the Grayson family than these files indicate, Aizawa replied. Much more. Nizu's whiskers twitched with interest. Then I suppose we'll have to keep a close eye on them, won't we? The academic year promises to be quite interesting. Interesting, Aizawa echoed, his eyes narrowing as he watched Marcus help another examinee to the medical tents, his movements too controlled, too measured for someone who had just participated in an intense physical exam. That's one way to put it. As the screens went dark, Aizawa couldn't shake the feeling that UA University had just admitted something far beyond the usual crop of aspiring heroes. What that might mean for the future, he couldn't begin to guess. But he would be watching. Very closely indeed. The Grayson family compound sat nestled in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Mizudafu. The spacious property, acquired through Roberta's skills, provided both privacy and comfort for its unusual inhabitants. In the kitchen, Roberta moved with practiced precision, her movements efficient yet somehow more fluid than usual. She had abandoned her mechanical avatar once more and returned to her normal form. Her slender fingers danced across cutting boards and mixing bowls as she prepared an elaborate meal, her pink energy occasionally assisting with multiple tasks simultaneously. A strand of hair fell across her face, and she tucked it behind her ear with a gesture that seemed almost rehearsed in its casualness. She had been practicing such movements, small, human gestures that conveyed emotion rather than mere function, doing them manually by hand, rather than, for example, moving the strand of hair away with her abilities. This was to be more normal, to show more of the emotions she felt but didn't truly know how to express. The molecular composition is optimal, she murmured to herself, adjusting the temperature of the oven with her powers. The flavor profile should be satisfactory. She caught herself using clinical language again and sighed softly. This was perhaps her greatest challenge, rewiring decades of purely analytical thinking to incorporate the emotional vocabulary she had observed in others. Amanda had been coaching her, suggesting she practice when alone to make it feel more natural. "This will taste delicious," she corrected herself, a small smile touching her lips. "He will enjoy it." The he in question was currently in the compound's private study, reviewing information about UA University while monitoring the entrance exam through discreet surveillance Roberta had established. Thragg had insisted on maintaining awareness of the children's progress, though he trusted their abilities implicitly. Roberta glanced at the clock, an unnecessary action given her internal clock, but another human gesture she was incorporating into her behavioral patterns. The children would be engaged in their entrance exam for several more hours. Nolan and Amanda had departed for a shopping expedition, Amanda having insisted that the household needed normal things to help them blend in. The real purpose, Roberta knew, was to give her this opportunity with Thragg. Amanda had been surprisingly supportive of Roberta's interest in the Emperor, even encouraging it. "He's going to need multiple partners anyway," Amanda had told her. "Better someone I trust and care about than strangers." The thought brought a flush of warmth to Roberta's cheeks. She had spent countless hours analyzing this physiological response, fascinated by how her body manifested reactions she had previously experienced only as abstract concepts. Blushing, she had discovered, was particularly difficult to control, a fact that both frustrated and delighted her. The timer chimed softly, pulling her from her thoughts. With careful precision, she removed the roast from the oven, a traditional Earth dish she had researched extensively, knowing Thragg's appreciation for their planet's culinary diversity. The aroma filled the kitchen, rich and inviting. "Cooking." The deep voice from the doorway startled her, causing her to nearly drop the hot pan. Her pink energy instinctively stabilized it as she turned to find Thragg watching her, his massive frame filling the entrance to the kitchen. "Emperor," she acknowledged, the formality slipping out automatically despite her intentions for a more casual interaction. Yes, I thought you might appreciate a proper meal while monitoring the children's progress." Thragg stepped into the kitchen, his movements controlled and deliberate as always. The battle beast coat was absent today, replaced by a simple black shirt that still struggled to contain his muscular physique. The sight momentarily disrupted Roberta's carefully maintained composure. "The surveillance systems are functioning optimally," he stated, moving closer to inspect her cooking. "All four are performing as expected, though maintaining appropriate power limitations." "That's good to hear," Roberta replied, consciously avoiding technical terminology. "I'm sure they'll succeed brilliantly." Thragg nodded, his attention shifting to the elaborate spread she had prepared. "This is extensive," he observed, one eyebrow raising slightly. "We are only two." "I may have miscalculated the appropriate quantities," Roberta admitted, a flush of embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "My experience with cooking for others is limited." To her surprise, the corner of Thragg's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. "A rare error in your calculations," he noted, his tone carrying none of the criticism she might have expected. "Nevertheless, the effort is appreciated." The simple acknowledgement sent an irrational surge of pleasure through her system. Roberta busied herself with serving, using her powers to arrange the food in an artistic way. Another inefficiency, but one she found herself enjoying. "Please, sit," she invited, gesturing to the dining area she had prepared. "Would you prefer water or wine? I've selected several options that complement the meal's flavor profile." "Wine," Thragg decided after a moment's consideration. "The red." Roberta nodded, pouring the wine with careful attention. Her hand trembled slightly as she placed the glass before him, another uncontrollable physiological response that both fascinated and frustrated her. They settled into a companionable silence as they began to eat. Roberta found herself watching Thragg surreptitiously, analyzing his reactions to each dish with an intensity that would have been embarrassing had anyone observed it. "The flavor combinations are well balanced," Thragg commented after several minutes. "You've studied the cuisine extensively." "Yes," Roberta confirmed, pleased by his observation. "I find the diversity of culinary traditions fascinating. Each culture has developed unique approaches to transforming basic nutritional requirements into experiences of pleasure and social bonding." She caught herself slipping into analytical mode again and paused, recalibrating her approach. I enjoy cooking. It's both scientific and artistic. Thragg studied her for a moment, his penetrating gaze seeming to see beyond her words to the effort behind them. You're attempting to modify your communication patterns, he observed. Why? The directness of the question caught Roberta off guard. She set down her fork, considering how to respond. Yes, she admitted finally. My default mode of expression tends toward the clinical and analytical. While efficient for conveying information, it lacks the emotional resonance that facilitates certain types of connections. She paused, then added more softly, human connections. Thragg continued eating, his expression thoughtful. Your analytical precision is one of your most valuable attributes, he stated. It need not be abandoned for the sake of conformity. It's not about conformity, Roberta clarified, her fingers fidgeting with her napkin, another newly acquired human gesture. It's about expansion. Adding emotional expressiveness doesn't diminish analytical capability, it complements it. She met his gaze directly, summoning her courage. Just as you have evolved beyond mere conquest to embrace elevation, I seek to evolve beyond mere analysis to embrace emotional connection. Something shifted in Thragg's expression, a subtle change that would have been imperceptible to most, but Roberta had spent countless hours studying his micro-expressions. Interest. Respect. Perhaps even approval. A valid perspective, he acknowledged, taking a sip of wine. Evolution requires integration of new elements, not merely rejection of the old. Roberta smiled, genuine pleasure warming her from within. Exactly. Though I find the process challenging at times. Such as expressing emotions that were previously only theoretical concepts, she explained. Affection, for instance. Or attraction. The last word emerged softer than intended, and Roberta felt heat rise to her cheeks once more. She cursed this involuntary response even as she recognized its authentic nature, exactly the emotional expressiveness she had been seeking to cultivate. Thragg's gaze intensified, and Roberta had the distinct impression he was seeing through her carefully constructed composure to the tumultuous emotions beneath. For someone who had spent decades hiding her true nature behind a mechanical facade, the sensation was both terrifying and exhilarating. Your efforts have not gone unnoticed, Thragg stated, his deep voice carrying an unusual gentleness. The changes in your behavior patterns. The increased emotional expressiveness. The physical gestures you've incorporated. Roberta's eyes widened slightly. You've been observing me. I observe everything, Thragg replied simply. Particularly those of significance. The implication sent a flutter through Roberta's chest, another physiological response she was still adjusting to. She took a sip of wine to compose herself, only to find her hand trembling again slightly as she set the glass down. I find your evolution intriguing, Thragg continued, his gaze never leaving her face. The integration of emotional capacity with your analytical precision creates a unique combination. One with considerable potential. Roberta recognized the compliment for what it was, high praise. Thank you, she replied, her voice softer than intended. Your approval means a great deal to me. Not merely approval, Thragg corrected. Appreciation. Recognition of value. The distinction was significant, and Roberta felt something warm unfurl within her chest. She busied herself with serving more food, using the activity to mask her emotional response. The children should be completing their practical exam soon, she noted, attempting to steer the conversation to safer territory. Based on their capabilities and the parameters of the test, they should achieve top rankings easily, even with the power limitations you've imposed. Indeed, Thragg agreed, accepting the change of subject gracefully. Their performance will establish their positions within UA's hierarchy while avoiding undue suspicion. They continued discussing the children's progress, the conversation flowing more naturally as they finished their meal. Roberta found herself relaxing gradually, her carefully rehearsed behaviors giving way to more authentic interactions. As they concluded the meal, Roberta began clearing the table, her pink energy assisting with the task. Would you care for dessert? She inquired. I've prepared several options based on flavor profiles you've shown preference for in the past. Thragg rose from his seat, his imposing height making the kitchen seem suddenly smaller. "Your attention to detail is commendable," he observed, moving around the table toward her. "As is your dedication to perfection." Roberta felt her heart rate accelerate as he approached, her enhanced body betraying her emotional state with each quickened beat. "I merely seek to serve effectively," she replied, her voice betraying a slight tremor. "No," Thragg contradicted, now standing directly before her. "You seek connection, understanding, reciprocation." The directness of his assessment left her momentarily speechless. Roberta looked up at him, abandoning any pretense of composure. "Yes," she admitted softly. "I do." For a moment, they stood in silence. Then, with a decisiveness that was just like who he was, Thragg reached out and lifted her effortlessly, his massive hands encircling her waist. "Emperor." Roberta stammered. "Thragg," he corrected, his deep voice rumbling through her. "When we are alone, you will use my name." Before she could respond, he leaned down and captured her lips with his own. The kiss was firm yet surprisingly gentle, a perfect balance of strength and restraint that left Roberta breathless. Her arms moved of their own accord, wrapping around his neck as she responded with an enthusiasm that surprised even herself. When they finally parted, Roberta found herself cradled against his chest, her own strength meaningless in his powerful embrace. The sensation was novel, exhilarating, being held by someone stronger than herself, someone capable of matching and exceeding her own abilities. "I have observed your interest," Thragg stated, his directness unchanged despite the intimacy of the moment, "and found it compatible with my own." A small laugh escaped Roberta, another spontaneous reaction she was still growing accustomed to. "That is the first and definitely the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me," she murmured, surprising herself with a teasing tone. Something that might have been amusement flickered in Thragg's eyes. Without warning, he shifted his grip, carrying her from the kitchen. The dessert dash Roberta began, then fell silent as she realized their destination. "Can wait," Thragg finished for her, his pace never faltering as he carried her through the compound toward the master bedroom. Roberta's calculated their trajectory, processing the implications with rapid precision even as her emotional responses created a pleasant chaos within her. By the time they reached the bedroom door, she had abandoned any pretense of detachment, her body responding to his with desire. The door slid open at Thragg's approach, Roberta's systems automatically recognizing and accommodating him. With a casual move he tossed her onto the massive bed, the action gentle despite its apparent forcefulness. Roberta landed with a soft gasp, her hair fanning out around her as she looked up at Thragg standing at the foot of the bed. His expression held a hunger she had never seen before directed towards her, his usual impassivity replaced by something far more primal. "Your calculations," Thragg said, his deep voice carrying a new intensity as he moved toward her. "They did not account for this variable." As he lowered himself onto the bed beside her, Roberta found herself genuinely smiling. "Some variables," she whispered as his form moved over hers, "are worth experiencing rather than calculating." And that was the last coherent thought in Roberta's mind before everything overwhelmed her. Morning sunlight filtered through the cherry blossoms lining the shopping district of Muzutafu. Amanda walked alongside Nolan, drawing occasional glances from passersby, not because she appeared unusual, but rather because of her regal way of movement, like everything exists for her pleasure and displeasure, something she's gotten from her husband, Thragg. "I still can't get over how polite everyone is here," Amanda remarked, adjusting her sunglasses as they exited a home goods store with several bags. "Back home, I'd have at least 3 people bump into me without apologizing by now." Nolan nodded, his powerful frame making the numerous shopping bags he carried look like tissue paper. Japanese culture emphasizes collective harmony over individual convenience. It's refreshing, though I suspect our presence still registers as somewhat unusual to them. "You mean they can sense we're not exactly the average shoppers?" Amanda grinned. "And here I thought we were blending in perfectly." "Your sarcasm has improved since our arrival," Nolan observed with a slight smile. "Thragg's influence, perhaps?" Amanda laughed, the sound drawing more glances from nearby shoppers. "Please. If anything, I'm the one teaching him about humor. Though I'll admit, he's got a surprisingly dry wit when he lets his guard down." They continued down the street, pausing occasionally to examine displays in shop windows. Despite the casual nature of their outing, both maintained a subtle awareness of their surroundings, a habit ingrained by years of experience and enhanced by their superior senses. Kitchen store next, Amanda suggested, consulting the list on her phone. Roberta insists we need proper knives, though God knows why when she can manipulate molecules directly. Perhaps the process itself holds value for her, Nolan replied thoughtfully. The experience rather than merely the result. Amanda considered this as they turned toward the kitchenware shop. You might be right. She's been working hard to embrace more human experiences lately. Indeed, Nolan agreed, his tone carefully neutral, as well as in some ways still formal, as Amanda currently is in some ways the Empress of Viltrum, though she has not received that title officially, Amanda herself as well having attempted to learn how to speak in this way. To replicate Thragg a bit and show her status as well as take into consideration the uncomfortableness of some Viltrumites to be spoken with by someone of higher standing with such informality. She appears quite dedicated to her personal evolution. Something in his voice made Amanda glance at him sharply, but his expression revealed nothing. They entered the shop, the conversation temporarily suspended as they browsed through high-end Japanese kitchen knives and cooking implements. After selecting several items that met Roberta's exacting specifications, they continued their shopping expedition, moving from store to store. It wasn't until they stopped at a small cafe for refreshments that Amanda returned to their earlier thread. So, she began, stirring her iced coffee. What was that tone about when we were discussing Roberta's personal evolution? Nolan took a sip of his green tea before responding. I'm not certain what you mean. Come on, Nolan, Amanda chided gently. We're family now, literally, thanks to Roberta's genetic modifications. You can drop the diplomatic act. A hint of amusement touched Nolan's features. Very well. I was merely observing that Roberta's efforts to become more emotionally expressive seem particularly focused on one individual. Ah, Amanda nodded, a smile playing at her lips. You noticed that too, huh? It would be difficult not to, Nolan replied. Her behavioral patterns shift noticeably in Thragg's presence. Amanda leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. She's had feelings for him for a long time, you know. Even before this whole interdimensional adventure began. I suspected as much, Nolan acknowledged, remembering the kiss she and Thragg shared in front of everyone. Her dedication to his vision has always seemed to extend beyond mere ideological alignment. They fell silent for a moment, watching the flow of pedestrians outside the cafe window. Speaking of interesting developments, Amanda said, changing the subject, have you been keeping up with the conspiracy theories back home? Some of them are getting pretty creative. Nolan raised an eyebrow. I admit I haven't paid much attention to fringe perspectives. Anything particularly noteworthy? Amanda chuckled, taking another sip of her coffee. Well, the latest one is that the Viltrumites are healing and fattening up humanity because they want, and I quote, cattle they can reproduce with and literally eat. Nolan nearly choked on his tea. That's imaginative. Isn't it? Amanda grinned. Apparently, all the medical advancements, disease eradication, and improved nutrition programs are just to make us tastier for the eventual Viltrumite feast. I'll have to inform my brother that his grand strategy has been uncovered, Nolan replied dryly. Though I suspect the logistics of consuming 8 billion humans might present certain challenges, even for Viltrumites. Their shared laughter drew curious glances from nearby patrons, but neither paid much attention. These moments of levity had become more frequent as they adjusted to their new reality and the bonds between them strengthened. The interesting thing, though, Amanda continued, her voice dropping slightly, is that the older conspiracy theorists, you know, the ones who were active before the takeover, they're actually supporting Viltrumite rule now. Is that so? Nolan's interest was genuine. Yeah. Turns out the people who spent decades warning about the evils behind closed doors, the corrupt billionaires and shadow governments, they're looking at what Thragg's doing and thinking, well, at least this tyrant is transparent and actually improving things. Nolan nodded thoughtfully. There's a certain logic to that perspective. The previous power structures operated through deception and manipulation, maintaining an illusion of freedom while concentrating wealth and influence among a select few. Thragg's approach, while undeniably authoritarian, is at least honest about its nature. Exactly, Amanda agreed. And the results are hard to argue with. Global peace, disease rates plummeting, poverty being systematically eliminated. Even the most dedicated freedom fighters are having trouble maintaining their resistance when life is objectively better for most people. The ideology is spreading, then, Nolan observed. Acceptance is growing even in communities previously resistant to Viltrumite governance. Spreading and evolving, Amanda confirmed. People are starting to see that it's not just about power and control, it's about elevation, about becoming something better. Nolan studied her for a moment, his expression contemplative. Speaking as well of Viltrumite ideology, he began, his tone shifting to something more personal. How are you holding up with recent developments? Roberta and Thragg have grown considerably closer. The question caught Amanda slightly off guard, though she maintained her composure. She took a moment to gather her thoughts, stirring her coffee absently. Honestly, she finally replied. At first, it was difficult. When Thragg and I first got together, I was jealous at the mere thought of sharing him. The first few months, I tried everything I could think of to keep his attention focused solely on me. A slight blush colored her cheeks as she continued. I won't go into specifics, that's private, but let's just say I was determined to be so perfect he wouldn't even consider taking another woman. Nolan nodded, his expression free of judgment. A natural response. Maybe, Amanda conceded. But not a particularly healthy one. I was exhausting myself trying to be everything at once, and Thragg, being Thragg, noticed immediately. I imagine he addressed the issue with his characteristic directness, Nolan observed. Amanda laughed softly. You could say that. One day, he literally dragged me aside, sat me down, and said we needed to discuss my behavioral anomalies. She straightened in her chair, adopting a serious expression and deepening her voice in an imitation of Thragg. Amanda, your attempts to monopolize my attention are both inefficient and unnecessary. Your value is not determined by exclusivity, nor is my regard for you contingent upon the absence of others. Nolan's lips twitched with suppressed amusement. That does sound like him. Oh, it gets better, Amanda stated, then once again continued her Thragg impression. Your concern appears to be rooted in an irrational fear that the introduction of additional partners would diminish your significance. This perspective fails to account for the nature of emotional attachment as I experience it. She paused, her expression softening as she returned to her normal voice. And then he explained, in his incredibly logical way, that love isn't a finite resource to be divided and diminished. That each person possesses unique characteristics worthy of appreciation, and that he is nothing if not thorough in his assessments. That's surprisingly insightful, Nolan commented. It was, Amanda agreed. Roberta later gave once again, the first time with me being too shocked by some things to really think about it, this whole evolutionary psychology lecture about how female jealousy isn't as fundamental as male jealousy because of different reproductive strategies or something. I'm not an expert on the scientific mumbo-jumbo, but it made sense in context. She took another sip of her coffee, her expression thoughtful. What I realized was that I wasn't really afraid of sharing him, I was afraid of being replaced, forgotten, and loved less than someone else. And when I understood that wasn't going to happen. The jealousy lost its power, Nolan finished for her. Exactly. Though I did get mock scandalized and asked what he didn't like about me, Amanda added with a grin. He just flicked my forehead, gently, of course, and said, your assumption that I would ever cease to value you is your only significant flaw. A comfortable silence fell between them as they finished their drinks. Amanda studied Nolan's face, noting the subtle signs of contemplation in his expression. So, she said finally, what's the real reason you're asking about this? Because I know it's more than simple concern for my well-being. Nolan hesitated, his fingers tracing the rim of his empty teacup. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than before. It's about Debbie, he admitted. As a Viltrumite, particularly one of royal blood, I am expected to contribute significantly to our species' repopulation efforts. Thragg has granted us a grace period, but eventually, you'll be expected to take additional partners, Amanda finished for him. Nolan nodded. Debbie and I have been preparing, in a sense. During my visits home, I've taken her to meet other families where similar arrangements exist, where one man has multiple female partners. She's spoken with the women, learning what to expect. That's a good approach, Amanda encouraged. Open communication is essential. Perhaps, Nolan sighed. But she's been avoiding the subject when I try to discuss it directly. I can't tell if she's truly coming to terms with the idea or simply delaying the inevitable confrontation. He looked up, meeting Amanda's gaze directly. We still have some time, a couple of years, at least. But for beings with our lifespan, that's barely a moment. I need to know where things stand before it's too late to address any concerns. Amanda reached across the table, placing her hand over his in a gesture of support. It's a difficult adjustment, she acknowledged. Especially for someone raised with monogamous expectations. But Debbie loves you, Nolan. That much is obvious to anyone who sees you together. Love may not be enough in this instance, Nolan replied, his voice carrying a rare note of uncertainty. Human cultural programming runs deep, particularly regarding relationships. True, Amanda conceded. But humans are also remarkably adaptable. More so than most species, in my experience. She paused, considering her next words carefully. You know, it's interesting, Thragg, Roberta, and I are essentially ageless at this point. My curse, their control over their atoms. We could live indefinitely, barring violence. And with Viltrumite technology advancing as it has, Debbie herself has become younger, hasn't she? Nolan nodded. Yes. The Emperor prioritized making his close associates ageless and functionally immortal. It's part of his long-term vision, eventually extending similar benefits to all of humanity, once they've fully embraced Viltrumite ideology. Smart atoms for everyone? Amanda asked, raising an eyebrow. Eventually, perhaps, Nolan confirmed. But only when loyalty is absolute. The Emperor believes that might take generations, waiting for the current dissenters to age and die while raising new generations who know only Viltrumite governance. Amanda nodded thoughtfully. A patient way of doing things. Makes sense too. They fell silent again, each lost in their own thoughts as they watched the world pass by outside the cafe window. Finally, Amanda spoke again, her voice gentle but firm. Don't worry too much, Nolan. If you'd like, when we return home, Roberta and I can talk to Debbie. Woman to woman, so to speak. Sometimes it's easier to discuss these things with someone who isn't your spouse. You would do that? Nolan asked, genuine gratitude in his voice. Of course, Amanda assured him. We're family now, remember? Besides, with Thragg officially being of royal blood himself now, thanks to Roberta's genetic modifications, he might be more flexible about the timeline. He might extend the grace period for you and Debbie, and even for Marcus and Evelyn. Marcus and Evelyn? Nolan repeated, momentarily confused. They're dealing with the same issue, though Evelyn seems more adjusted from what I can tell. I asked her about it subtly, and she seems to have come to terms with the idea. Probably because she's been thinking about it for a long time, even before getting together with Marcus. Nolan nodded slowly. I hadn't considered that they would be facing similar challenges. Perhaps I should speak with Mark as well. Still adjusting a bit to calling his son by his full name, Marcus Sebastian Grayson. Father-son bonding over relationships. Amanda teased gently. Could be interesting. Indeed, Nolan agreed with a slight smile. Thank you, Amanda. Your perspective is valuable. Anytime, she replied, gathering her purse as they prepared to leave. They exited the cafe and continued their shopping expedition, moving through the crowded streets. I think we've covered everything on the list, Nolan observed as they exited the final store. Shall we return home? Yes, Amanda agreed, checking the time on her phone. The kids should be finishing their entrance exam soon. I'm curious to hear how it went, though I have no doubts they all performed well. Of course they did, Nolan replied with quiet pride. They're Graysons. Amanda smiled at that, adjusting her sunglasses as they turned toward home. Yes, they are. All of us are now. The morning sun cast long shadows across UA University's campus as Class 1A gathered in class. Marcus Grayson stood among his new classmates, mentally cataloging each student based on the information Roberta had provided during their preparation. Katsuki Bakugo, explosive temper matching his quirk, among the ones who scored high in the entrance exam. Shoto Todoroki, son of the number 2 hero, powerful dual quirk user. Izuku Midoriya mysteriously acquired a powerful strength enhancement quirk after being quirkless his entire life. Marcus felt Evelyn's presence beside him, her posture relaxed yet alert. "I am your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa," announced a disheveled man in black, his bloodshot eyes scanning the assembled students with clear disinterest. "Put these on and meet at the PE grounds. Immediately." As the students went to get to the training field and change into their gym uniforms, Marcus recalled what his uncle and father told him. Flashback, "Integration is key," Thragg had stated, his imposing frame dominating the family meeting room. "This world worships its heroes. Becoming part of that system will facilitate our long-term objectives." Nolan nodded in agreement. "Just as I did on our Earth, you must establish yourselves as trusted figures. Learn their customs, their weaknesses, and their potential allies." "But why UA specifically?" Mark had asked. "Wouldn't it be more efficient, for example, for you, Dad, to simply join the professional hero ranks directly?" "UA produces the society's elite," Thragg explained. "The future leaders, the most powerful quirk users. By infiltrating now, you position yourselves at the center of their power structure." Amanda leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "Plus, let's be practical. Getting this world to heal will be challenging with all these quirks. Casualties could be significant unless we have insider knowledge and established relationships." "Your mission," Thragg continued, "is threefold. First, identify potential allies, those who might willingly join us when the time comes. Second, subtly influence those on the edge toward dissatisfaction with the current system. Third, gather intelligence on any threats that might require special handling. Remember," Nolan added, his voice carrying the weight of experience, "patience is essential. We have time. Use it wisely." "Today we're conducting a quirk assessment test," Aizawa announced, pulling Marcus back to the present. The class murmured in surprise, several students protesting about missing the orientation ceremony. "If you want to make it to the top, you can't waste time on pointless ceremonies," Aizawa stated flatly. "Here at UA, we're not tethered to traditions. That means I get to run my class however I see fit." He turned to Marcus, his bloodshot eyes narrowing slightly. "Grayson, you managed to get the highest score on the entrance exam. What was your farthest distance throw with a softball when you were in high school?" Marcus paused, remembering his cover story as a late bloomer. "I didn't have my quirk in high school, sir. So only about 40 meters with normal human strength." Aizawa's eyebrow raised slightly at this information, acting as if he didn't already know, like a lazy teacher who didn't read their files. "A late manifester? Interesting. Well, try doing it with your quirk now," he instructed, tossing him a ball. "Anything goes, just stay in the circle." Marcus stepped forward, aware of all eyes on him. He gripped the ball, carefully calculating the appropriate level of strength to display, enough to impress, but not enough to reveal his true capabilities. With a fluid motion that spoke of years of practiced control, he threw the ball. It shot forward with impressive speed, though clearly restrained. Aizawa watched the trajectory, his expression darkening as the ball landed. He held up his phone displaying the distance, 705.2 meters. "Is that all you've got, Grayson? For someone who topped the entrance exam, that's surprisingly mediocre." The class fell silent, sensing the tension. "I was just Marcus began. Holding back, Aizawa finished for him, his tone cutting. "I can see it in your form, your control. You're calculating rather than performing." His eyes narrowed dangerously. "Let me make something clear. In my class, you give your absolute best or you leave. I have no interest in teaching students who won't push their limits." Marcus felt the weight of every stare on his back. "Try again," Aizawa commanded, tossing him another ball. "And this time, stop playing games. Show me why you deserve that top score, or pack your bags." A murmur ran through the class. Being threatened with expulsion before the first test was even complete was absurd. Marcus reassessed his approach. This teacher was far more perceptive than anticipated. He would need to display more of his strength while still maintaining his cover. Can't show that he is near the strength of their top heroes, after all, as a mere university student. "Yes, sir," he replied, stepping back into the circle. This time, He allowed more of his power to flow through his arm as he launched the ball. The resulting throw created a small sonic boom that echoed across the field, the ball becoming little more than a blur as it soared through the air. Aizawa's device climbed rapidly before settling at 1,203.4 meters. "That's more like it," Aizawa stated, though his eyes remained suspicious. "Now, let me explain to the rest of you what this is about. Today you'll compete in 8 physical tests to gauge your potential. Whoever comes in last has none and will be expelled immediately." A collective gasp rippled through the students. Marcus exchanged another glance with Evelyn, both recognizing the tactical value of this development. Pressure revealed character. "All of you need to know your maximum capabilities," Aizawa continued. "It's the most rational way to figure out your potential as a pro hero." As the tests began, Marcus carefully recalibrated his performance. For the 50-meter dash, he clocked in at 3.04 seconds, impressive enough to raise eyebrows but not so extraordinary as to seem inhuman. Evelyn followed with 3.12 seconds, her pink energy subtly propelling her forward. "Grayson's taking the lead," Aizawa noted, his expression unreadable. "Let's see if they maintain it." The grip strength test provided another opportunity for measured excellence. Marcus applied precisely 540 kilograms of pressure, comparable to what All Might might casually display, but nowhere near his actual capability. "Impressive," murmured Mizo Shoji, whose multiple arms had produced a respectable 540 kilograms as well. "Your strength quirk is quite powerful." "Thanks," Marcus replied with a practiced humble smile. "Yours too. Multiple limbs must be useful in a lot of situations." The standing long jump proved trivial. Both Marcus and Evelyn cleared the sandbox entirely, landing gracefully beyond its confines. Several classmates watched with undisguised admiration. "They're so good," exclaimed Achiko Uraraka. "The Graysons must come from a family of pros." "I've never heard of any pro heroes with their last name," Izuku Midoriya muttered, his mind clearly working overtime to run through his memories. Their quirks seem similar to All Might's in strengthening. During the repeated sidesteps, Marcus deliberately placed third behind Mineta and another student, recognizing that he shouldn't appear too perfect, would make him a bit too above everyone and unapproachable, not good for his mission. When they reached the ball throw again, Evelyn stepped into the circle first. Pink energy surrounded the ball as she manipulated its molecular structure, making it virtually weightless while simultaneously propelling it forward with a bit of force. "Infinity," Aizawa announced, showing his phone to the class. Like Uraraka's throw, the ball had effectively entered orbit. "Whoa!" Kaminari exclaimed. "Another infinity. What exactly is your quirk again?" "Matter manipulation," Evelyn explained with a modest smile. "I can alter the molecular structure of objects I touch or focus on." The long-distance run provided another opportunity for Marcus to demonstrate again a bit of ability, making him in the future a potential prospect as a sidekick to the pros, but again, not too impressive. While still restraining himself to maintain his cover, he completed the track in a time that had Aizawa raising his eyebrows and Midoriya frantically muttering calculations. That's almost as fast as All Might's recorded time from his recent documentary." Midoriya exclaimed, his eyes wide. "Not his prime, but still." He muttered the last part to himself. The seated toe touch and sit-ups passed without incident, though Marcus noted with interest how various students utilized their quirks to enhance their performances. Creative application would be valuable information for future reference. As Aizawa compiled the final results, tension filled the air. Midoriya in particular looked devastated, having performed poorly after apparently injuring himself during the ball throw. "Time for the results," Aizawa announced. "Your total scores reflect your performance in each of the 8 events. I'm being logical about this and ranking you all from best to worst. Here are the rankings." The holographic display appeared, showing the final standings. Marcus Grayson, Evelyn Grayson, Momo Yaoyorozu, Shoto Todoroki, Katsuki Bakugo. The list continued, with Midoriya's name appearing at the very bottom. "I was last," Midoriya whispered, his face pale. "That means I'm expelled." Bakugo stared at the rankings, his expression darkening as he processed being outperformed. His fists clenched at his sides, small explosions popping from his palms. "And I was lying about expelling someone," Aizawa suddenly announced. "That was just a rational deception to make sure you gave your all." Relief washed over most students' faces, though Yaoyorozu commented that they should have realized it was a logical ruse. As the class began to disperse, Marcus noticed Bakugo stalking toward Midoriya, his expression murderous.
DEKU.
Bakugo snarled, grabbing the green-haired student's collar. You've got some explaining to do. You were quirkless. So what the hell was that power? You've been lying to me this entire time, haven't you? I should blow your tongue off. Marcus moved, after a moment of taking in what was happening, positioning himself between them, wanting to help as a good person, while also seeing the opportunity in this. That's enough, he said firmly. Whatever issues you have, this isn't the way to resolve them. Stay out of this, extra. Bakugo roared, small explosions crackling in his palm. This is between me and this lying piece of dash. I said enough, Marcus repeated, unmoved by the display. I don't know what history you two have, but threatening a classmate crosses a line. We're all here to become heroes, aren't we? This behavior suggests otherwise. Bakugo's eyes widened in rage. You looking down on me? I'll kill you. He lunged forward, an explosion building in his palm, while Marcus readied himself for a counter, only to find his attack completely nullified as his quirk suddenly deactivated and his body restrained by capture tape. That's enough, Aizawa stated, his eyes glowing red and his scarf-like weapon wrapped around Bakugo. Causing a fight on the first day? How irrational. His gaze shifted to Marcus, and his eyes narrowed in confusion. Despite his quirk erasure being active, Marcus showed no signs of shock or the like of losing his enhanced abilities. Did he not lose it? Or did he not realize it? If it was the former, then, well, it should be impossible. Interesting, Aizawa murmured, filing this observation away for later investigation. Bakugo, control your temper. Grayson, while I appreciate your intervention, I don't need students fighting my battles. Everyone is dismissed. Midoriya, go see Recovery Girl about that finger. As the class dispersed, Evelyn joined Marcus. Making friends already? She teased quietly. You could say that, he replied, but I've identified several potential good friends for our future heroic career. Good friends, they're code word for potential candidates that are good to keep under observation and, if possible, steer them towards their side. As have I, Evelyn agreed. Particularly Yaoyorozu and Todoroki. Both from prominent families, both with exceptional abilities. Don't forget Midoriya, Marcus added. There's something unusual about his power. The way it injures him. Something just tells me there is more to it. They walked in silence toward the main building, their first day successfully navigated. Behind them, Aizawa watched their departure, his mind working through the implications of what he'd observed. Erasure possibly didn't work on him, he muttered to himself. But that's impossible. Am I being too paranoid? Maybe I should sleep an hour longer today. Still, just to be sure, he pulled out his phone and began typing a message to Principal Nizu. The Grayson family warranted closer observation, much closer than they might expect, since every instinct in his body just told him there was more to them, and as a logical person who believed in intuition and instinct existing and to be trusted in battle, since it has come into existence as a way of survival, he knew he'd be a fool to completely ignore it. The morning alarm chimed at precisely 5:30 a.m., a sound that Thragg silenced with a single motion. He rose from bed with practiced efficiency, careful not to disturb Amanda and Roberta, who slept beside him. The battle beast coat hung on a specialized stand near the door, inappropriate for his current role but never far from reach. Thragg's morning routine was methodical. 15 minutes of physical activity, deliberately restrained to avoid damaging the house. A 7-minute shower. Breakfast prepared with military precision. All calculated to maintain his cover as Thragg Grayson, former military specialist, current detective with the Muzutafu Police Department's Special Investigations Division. If one wants to fool the world, first they must make the basics of the made-up identity a reality. As he dressed in his tailored suit, Thragg reflected on the identity Roberta had crafted for him. The choice to position himself within law enforcement had been strategic. Heroes might have greater public visibility, but detectives had access to information systems, crime scenes, and intelligence networks that would prove invaluable for their mission. You seem to be thinking a lot this morning, Amanda observed, having awakened during his preparations. She sat up in bed, watching him adjust his tie with amusement. Still getting used to playing cop? The role is instructive, Thragg replied, his deep voice carefully modulated to a more conversational tone than his natural imperial cadence. This constant adjustment to his speech patterns remained uncomfortable, though he recognized its necessity. Their systems of authority are inefficient but revealing. Amanda smiled, stretching languidly. Well, you look good in the suit, at least. Very detective-like. Thragg examined his reflection in the mirror. The tailored charcoal suit concealed his muscular frame as much as possible, though he still presented an imposing figure. His hair was precisely trimmed, his mustache impeccably groomed. The children's integration at UA proceeds as expected? He asked, checking his service weapon, a formality, as it was essentially decorative given his abilities. Marcus and Evelyn are excelling in Class 1A, and Mark and Eva in 1B, Amanda confirmed. Their teacher, Aizawa, seemed suspicious, but that was anticipated by Roberta having checked his background. Thragg nodded once. Acceptable. Suspicion without evidence merely establishes their exceptional nature. He moved to the bedside, bending to place a brief kiss on Amanda's forehead and then Roberta's sleeping form as well. It seems he tire her quite a bit with their activities. Amanda has the advantage of having more stamina because of her other form. I will return at approximately 1900 hours. Amanda caught his hand, her expression softening. That's 7 p.m. in normal people time, and try to say, I'll be home for dinner, instead. You're getting better, but sometimes you still sound like you're giving a dull professor's lecture. I'll be home for dinner, Thragg repeated, the casual phrasing feeling foreign on his tongue. Much better, Amanda approved with a smile. Now go catch some bad guys, detective. The Muzutafu Police Department's Special Investigations Division occupied the top floor of the Central Precinct building. Unlike the bustling activity of the regular police floors below, the SID operated with quiet efficiency, handling cases involving complex quirk usage, organized crime with quirk elements, and situations requiring specialized knowledge beyond standard police training. Thragg entered the office precisely at 7 a.m., nodding acknowledgments to the handful of early arriving colleagues. His desk was immaculate, organized with geometric precision, a trait that had initially drawn curious glances but was now accepted as simply another of Detective Grayson's military-bred peculiarities. Morning, Grayson, greeted Detective Tanaka, a veteran officer with a minor analysis quirk that enhanced his observational skills. You're punctual as always. Good morning, Tanaka, Thragg replied, consciously adding a slight upturn to his lips that humans would recognize as a friendly smile. Any developments overnight? Tanaka slid a folder across to him. 2 new cases. A quirk-based robbery at Muzutafu Central Bank, some kind of phasing ability. And a series of assaults in the warehouse district. Victims report being attacked by someone who could manipulate shadows. Thragg opened the folder, scanning the contents with rapid efficiency while maintaining a human-appropriate reading pace. The phasing quirk matches the MO of the suspect in the Hosu jewelry heist last month. Has the hero office been notified? Yeah, they're sending someone over. Probably one of the local pros, not a big name. Thragg nodded, already mentally cataloging the tactical applications of a phasing quirk and its potential weaknesses. I'll take the warehouse district case. The shadow manipulation suggests a stealth-oriented perpetrator. Less likely to have hero involvement already. Tanaka raised an eyebrow. You always pick the ones without heroes attached. Not a fan of the caped crowd. This was a recurring observation that required careful management. Thragg had deliberately established a pattern of professional distance from heroes without displaying overt antipathy that might raise suspicion. Doing so to have a cover for when in the future he does become close to them. Heroes have their purpose, Thragg replied, injecting a hint of what others would interpret as wry amusement into his tone. But they tend to complicate investigations with their enthusiasm. Tanaka laughed. Diplomatic as always, Grayson. But you're not wrong. Last week I had that kid backdraft practically wash away my crime scene trying to help. Precisely my point, Thragg said, rising from his desk. I'll begin with the most recent assault location. The warehouse district sprawled across Muzutafu's eastern edge, a maze of industrial buildings, shipping containers, and narrow alleys. The most recent attack had occurred in a service corridor between 2 storage facilities, far from the main thoroughfares. Thragg surveyed the scene, his enhanced senses detecting details invisible to human investigators. Microscopic traces of a dark substance clung to the walls, not blood, but something similar to the residue left by certain quirks. The pattern of scuff marks on the ground indicated a struggle, with the victim being dragged approximately 4.7 meters before escaping. He was documenting these observations when he detected an approach, someone moving across the rooftops with practiced stealth, but not silently enough to evade his hearing. "You might as well come down," Thragg called, not looking up from his notes. "Your presence is already noted." A moment of silence followed, then a figure dropped from above, landing in a crouch before straightening. A hero in a black and gray costume with stylized eye motifs across the chest and shoulders stood before him. "Impressive hearing, detective," the hero said. "Most people don't notice me until I want them to." Thragg recognized him from Roberta's database of local heroes, Nightwatcher, a mid-tier professional with enhanced night vision and limited stealth capabilities. Not particularly powerful, but well-regarded for his investigative approach to heroism. Detective Grayson, Special Investigations, Thragg introduced himself, extending a hand in the customary greeting ritual. "Your reputation precedes you, Nightwatcher." The hero seemed pleased by the recognition, shaking Thragg's hand firmly. "I've been tracking these shadow attacks for the past week. 3 victims so far, all with the same description of the attacker. Thought I might catch them in action tonight." "You believe they'll return to the same location?" Thragg asked, genuinely curious about the hero's reasoning. "The pattern suggests they're territorial," Nightwatcher explained, moving to examine the wall where Thragg had been collecting samples. "All attacks within a 3-block radius, all against people who were alone in areas with minimal lighting. Classic predatory behavior." Thragg found himself mildly impressed with the analysis. A reasonable hypothesis. The residue on the walls indicates a quirk that manipulates existing shadows rather than generating darkness independently. Nightwatcher turned, surprise evident in his body language despite his masked face. "You can tell that from the residue? That's unusually perceptive for a detective. No offense." "None taken," Thragg replied smoothly. "I specialized in quirk analysis during my military service. The molecular structure of genuine shadow manipulation leaves distinctive traces." Thragg has been trying for a while to replicate Roberta's and the Eve's matter manipulation abilities, but the best he has been able to do is increase awareness of the molecular structure of things beyond his own, which is useful for his detective work. "Military, huh? That explains the posture," Nightwatcher said, relaxing slightly. "Well, detective, since we're both after the same target, how about we collaborate? I've got the night vision, you've got the analysis skills." Thragg considered the proposal. Working with a hero would provide valuable insight into their operational methods while also beginning to establish himself as cooperative with the hero system. "An efficient approach," he agreed. "I was planning to establish surveillance tonight. Your abilities would complement the operation." Nightwatcher seemed pleased by the acceptance. "Great. Most cops I work with either want to hand everything over to heroes or try to shut us out completely. Nice to meet one with a practical attitude." Thragg nodded, allowing a slight smile. "Effectiveness takes precedence over protocol." "Couldn't have said it better myself," Nightwatcher replied. "I'll meet you back here at sunset? That's when our shadow friend is most likely to be active." "Agreed. 1830 hours at this location." The hero gave him an amused look. "Military time. Right. See you at 6:30, detective." As Nightwatcher departed, Thragg returned to his evidence collection, mentally analyzing this interaction. The hero had been respectful, competent, and reasonably intelligent. Potentially useful for gathering information about hero society from a mid-tier perspective. By mid-afternoon, Thragg had compiled a comprehensive profile of the shadow manipulator based on witness statements, crime scene evidence, and historical case files. The suspect was likely male, in his mid-20s, with a quirk that allowed control of existing shadows but required a direct line of sight. The attacks showed increasing confidence, suggesting escalation was imminent. He was reviewing security footage from nearby buildings when Captain Morita approached his desk. "Grayson, heard you're working with Nightwatcher on the shadow case," the captain said, leaning against the desk partition. "Good. The Commissioner's been pushing for more hero-police collaboration lately. The hero's abilities complement our investigative resources, Thragg replied neutrally. It was the logical approach. Morita chuckled. Always so practical. That's why I like you, Grayson. No ego in the way. He lowered his voice slightly. Between us, though, keep an eye on him. Nightwatcher's solid, but heroes sometimes get competitive when they're close to a capture. Don't let him run off half-cocked if you locate the suspect. Understood, Captain. Thragg nodded. The priority remains public safety and proper procedure. Exactly. Morita straightened. Oh, and the Commissioner wants your input on that quirk classification system you proposed. The one that categorizes based on molecular interaction rather than observable effects. He thinks it might have applications for the national database. I'll prepare a detailed proposal, Thragg promised, making a mental note to have Roberta assist with appropriately advanced but not suspiciously beyond current science documentation. It was a way to establish them as well as a family that has very much understanding of quirks, a family of scientific ingenuity, thanks to the girls and his wife Roberta's knowledge of matter. This could get them to be more in contact with people with special quirks and study quirks more to eventually replicate them for Viltrumites. After Morita left, Thragg returned to his analysis but found his thoughts drifting to this world's hero system. The hierarchy was interesting, to say the least. A complex interplay of public approval, government oversight, and combat effectiveness. So different from Viltrum's pure meritocracy based on strength, yet not without its own form of efficiency. These thoughts occupied him until it was time to return to the warehouse district. Sunset painted Muzutafu's skyline in hues of orange and purple as Thragg positioned himself on a rooftop overlooking the previous attack site. He had changed from his suit to tactical gear, black pants and a dark gray tactical shirt that allowed greater freedom of movement while maintaining a professional appearance. Nightwatcher arrived precisely on time, landing silently beside him. Evening, Detective. Nice spot. Good sightlines. It covers the 3 most likely approach vectors based on previous attacks, Thragg explained. I've placed motion sensors in the blind spots. This was another fabrication. His enhanced senses made such devices unnecessary, but maintaining his cover required such pretenses. Impressive setup, Nightwatcher commented, settling into a comfortable surveillance position. You don't move like regular police. Special forces. Something like that, Thragg replied vaguely, a specialized unit. Thought so, Nightwatcher nodded. I worked with a guy from the JSDF's quirk response team once. Had that same precision. They lapsed into silence for a time, watching the growing shadows below as night fully descended. Thragg used the opportunity to observe the hero more closely. Nightwatcher's breathing patterns, heart rate, and micromovements all spoke of extensive training and experience, above average for this world's heroes, though still laughably inadequate by Viltrumite standards. So what made you join the police instead of going pro? Nightwatcher asked eventually, his voice kept low. With your quirk analysis skills and that military background, you could have been a solid hero. The question was one Thragg had prepared for, having recognized it as inevitable in this hero-obsessed society. I prefer a more structured approach to justice, he replied. Heroes serve their purpose, but police work offers consistency. Procedure. Something beyond individual interpretation of right and wrong. Nightwatcher seemed to consider this. Fair point. The hero system has its flaws. Too much emphasis on flashy quirks and popularity sometimes. Not enough on actual results. This was interesting, a professional hero expressing criticism of the system. Thragg filed this away as potentially useful information. You seem unusually self-aware for a pro-hero. Been at it long enough to see the cracks, Nightwatcher shrugged. Don't get me wrong, I believe in what we do. But the system could use some reform. Too much bureaucracy, too much pandering to rankings and sponsors. Yet you remain within the system, Thragg observed. Change from within, Nightwatcher replied. Plus, I'm not exactly top 10 material. Easier to stay principled when you're not being offered million-yen endorsement deals. Their conversation was interrupted by movement in the alley below, a figure slipping from shadow to shadow with unnatural fluidity. not walking through the darkness, but seeming to become part of it before reforming elsewhere. Target acquired, Thragg stated quietly. The shadows seemed to extend from the figure's body, suggesting a mutation emitter hybrid rather than pure manipulation. I see him, Nightwatcher confirmed. Waiting for potential victim or moving to another location. The latter. Previous patterns indicate hunting behavior, not ambush predation. Nightwatcher gave him another surprised look. You really do know your stuff, detective. Most cops would have just said, he's on the move. Thragg realized he had slipped slightly in his speech pattern, allowing his analytical nature to override his more approachable persona. Military habit. Precise terminology prevents miscommunication. The shadow figure moved deeper into the warehouse complex, occasionally pausing to check surroundings but clearly heading with purpose. We follow, Thragg decided, already plotting the most efficient intercept course. Maintain visual contact but prioritize stealth. Nightwatcher nodded. I'll take the high route, you take ground level? Yes, Thragg agreed. They separated, Thragg descending to ground level with deliberate care to make appropriate noise for a human. He followed the shadow manipulator through the maze of warehouses, maintaining a distance that would seem challenging but manageable for a well-trained detective who has an injury and doesn't use his strengthening quirk much for personal reasons. The suspect eventually stopped at an abandoned loading dock, where the shadows were particularly dense. Thragg observed as the figure seemed to meld with the darkness, becoming nearly invisible to what would be normal human sight. Nightwatcher's voice came through the communicator Thragg had accepted earlier. I've lost visual. Too dark even for my night vision. Can you still see him? No, Thragg lied smoothly, his enhanced vision tracking the suspect perfectly. But he's entered the loading dock of Warehouse 17. No exits except the main doors and a fire escape on the east side. I'll take the fire escape, Nightwatcher replied. You cover the main entrance. Wait for my signal before moving in. Understood, Thragg acknowledged, moving into position. He could, of course, have apprehended the suspect instantly with minimal effort. But that would compromise his cover and waste a valuable opportunity to observe hero operational procedures. Patience had served him for millennia. It would serve him now. Nightwatcher's signal came 3 minutes later, 3 clicks over the communicator. Thragg entered through the main doors, moving like a well-trained human officer, service weapon drawn as procedure would dictate. He heard Nightwatcher's controlled breathing from the catwalk above. Police. Come out with your hands visible. Thragg called. A laugh echoed through the darkness, seeming to come from everywhere at once. Police? In my domain? How adorable. Shadows surged forward like solid tentacles, aiming for Thragg with surprising speed. He allowed one to graze his arm before dodging the others. Nightwatcher, he can weaponize the shadows. Thragg called out. The hero dropped from above, his specialized goggles glowing faintly as he activated some enhancement. I see him. 3 o'clock from your position, detective. Thragg turned, firing his weapon with deliberate near misses to drive the suspect toward Nightwatcher's position. The hero moved, using the distraction to close distance and deploy a capture device, some kind of light-emitting restraint specifically designed for shadow quirks. The suspect howled as the light cut through his shadow form, forcing him to solidify. Damn heroes. Always interfering. Thragg moved in to complete the arrest, reciting the appropriate legal warnings as he secured the now visible suspect, a thin man with gray-tinged skin and entirely black eyes. Impressive coordination, detective, Nightwatcher commented as they led the secured suspect outside, where a police transport was already arriving, summoned by Thragg's earlier alert. Most cops I work with would have been shadow food. Likewise, Thragg replied, allowing a hint of genuine approval. Your tactical approach was efficient. After transferring the suspect to the transport officers, Nightwatcher extended his hand. We made a good team. If you ever need hero backup on another case, ask for me specifically. Most of the flashy types wouldn't appreciate your style, but I do. Thragg accepted the handshake, careful to apply appropriate human pressure. I'll keep that in mind. Your assistance was valuable. As Nightwatcher departed and Thragg began the necessary paperwork for the arrest, he reflected on the night's events. Another day of establishing himself, complete. He honestly should reward Nolan in some way when they get back. This undercover business is quite the annoyance, especially with him having to alter his speech to more approachable levels. To not sound, as Amanda so delicately put it, like a Roman emperor trying to file a complaint at the DMV with blood on his sandals. Yes, his little brother perhaps deserved some kind of extra reward. Time skip 1 month. Samantha, war-torn Eve's POV. I remember when I believed in heroes. When I thought that sacrifice meant something. That if I gave enough, my body, my safety, my future, the world would recognize it. Reward it. Protect me in return. I was such a child then. The mask fits perfectly against my face, the black material molded to my features like a second skin. The voice modulator hums quietly as I breathe, transforming my natural tones into something deeper, more mechanical. Less human. Appropriate, really. The long black coat settles around me as I crouch on the rooftop, watching the warehouse below. Beside me, Heisenberg, Nolan's pristine white form is a stark contrast to my darkness, like we're playing at being yin and yang. Good cop, bad cop. Though neither of us is good, not really. 6 guards, he says, his voice similarly altered by his mask. 2 at each entrance, 2 patrolling. Standard rotation pattern. Minimal quirk usage, they're trying to stay under the radar. I nod once. The lab. Northeast corner. Reinforced walls. 3 heat signatures inside, likely the chemists. The plan is simple. We're not here to arrest anyone or save the day. We're here to take over. To claim this small-time operation as our own and use it to climb higher in this world's underworld. To eventually draw out the shadow that Roberta, my mother now, still strange to think of her that way, discovered lurking behind everything. All for one. The greatest villain in this world's history. Dad wants to meet him. To understand him. To eliminate him if necessary. And what Dad wants, I ensure he gets. Ready? Heisenberg asks, though it's not really a question. We both know I am. I stand, feeling the power hum through my veins. Since coming to this world, since Roberta's genetic modifications, since all I've experienced, my abilities have evolved. The mental blocks that once limited my molecular manipulation are gone. I can feel every atom around me now. Every molecule. Every possibility. Let's go, I say, and step off the edge of the roof. The first guard doesn't even have time to shout. I land silently behind him, my hand already covering his mouth as I manipulate the air molecules around his head, creating a localized zone devoid of oxygen. He struggles briefly before slumping unconscious in my arms. Across the yard, Heisenberg moves like a white ghost, his enhanced speed making him nearly invisible as he neutralizes the other guards with equal efficiency. We meet at the side entrance, bodies carefully hidden. Remember, he says quietly, we need most of them alive. This operation continues under new management. I nod, though part of me is disappointed. The old me would have been horrified by such thoughts. But the old me died in another world, under another Mark's perverse hands. The door's electronic lock is child's play. I simply rearrange its molecular structure, making the metal flow like water around my fingers before resolidifying in an open position. Inside, the warehouse is dimly lit, stacks of crates creating a maze-like pattern. The air smells of chemicals and sweat. From the shadows, I can hear low conversations and the occasional laugh. They have no idea what's coming. Heisenberg taps my shoulder, pointing to a corridor leading deeper into the building. I follow, my footsteps silent, my senses extended through the molecular vibrations around us. 3 men playing cards at a folding table. 2 more cleaning weapons. 1 speaking rapidly into a phone. All minor threats. The lab is behind a heavy steel door at the end of the corridor. Through it, I can sense 3 people moving around equipment, the complex molecular structures of their drug floating in solution tanks. Heisenberg, that name is still kinda funny. Nolan having chosen it because Debbie and he liked some show, I still need to watch it. Luckily Mom has it downloaded, looks at me, and I know what he's asking. With a slight nod, I place my palm against the door and feel the metal respond to my will, flowing aside like curtains parting. The 3 men inside freeze, their expression shifting from surprise to fear as they take in our appearances, the black and white figures from nowhere, faceless behind our masks. What the hell? One of them manages, reaching for something under his lab coat. He never completes the motion. Heisenberg is across the room in a blur, the man's arm bent at an unnatural angle behind his back. I wouldn't, Heisenberg says quietly. The other two raise their hands immediately, backing away from their workstations. Who are you? Asks the oldest of them, a thin man with graying hair at his temples. If Muscular sent you we represent ourselves, I interrupt, my voice cold through the modulator. Your operation interests us. The third man, younger than the others with nervous eyes, glances toward a red button on the wall. I smile behind my mask, though they can't see it. If you're thinking about calling for help, I say softly, don't bother. To demonstrate, I extend my hand toward the alarm system. With a thought, the wiring inside the wall disintegrates, the molecules separating and reforming as harmless dust. The young man's eyes widen. What kind of quirk is that? Before I can respond with how stupid that question is, the door behind us bursts open. 6 men rush in, guns drawn, led by a muscular figure with a face tattoo that crawls up from his neck like ivy. Boss, one of the gunmen says, these two just walked in I can see that. Moron, the tattooed man snaps. He studies us, eyes narrowed. You've got some nerve coming in here uninvited. This is Viper territory. So this is the infamous Viper. The boss of this small-time operation is known for his cruelty and the potency of the quirk-enhancing drugs his chemists produce. Not the strongest villain in the area, but connected enough to matter for our purposes. Your security is inadequate, Heisenberg states flatly. 6 of your men are currently unconscious outside. Your alarm system has been neutralized. And you still don't understand the situation you're in. Viper laughs, a harsh sound like gravel being crushed. Big talk from a couple of costumed freaks. Do you have any idea who I am? A small fish, I reply, in a very large pond. His face darkens. You're dead. Both of you. He turns to his men. Kill them. Slowly. The gunmen raise their weapons, but they're too slow. Far too slow. I extend my awareness, feeling the metal of their guns and the chemicals in the ammunition. With a flick of my wrist, I alter the molecular bonds. The weapons crumble in their hands, turning to fine dust that sifts through their fingers. Their expressions are almost comical, shock giving way to terror as they realize what they're facing. Heisenberg moves then, a white blur among them. I hear the crack of bones, the soft thuds of bodies hitting the floor. He's careful not to kill them, just incapacitate. We need workers, after all. In seconds, only Viper remains standing, his tattooed face pale with shock. What the hell are you people? He stammers, backing away until he hits the lab table. I step forward, my black coat swirling around my ankles. We're your new employers. His fear transforms into rage. Like hell you are. This is my operation. My territory. Heisenberg corrects mildly. Viper's hand darts toward his belt, pulling a knife with practiced speed. The blade gleams under the harsh fluorescent lights as he lunges toward me. I don't move. Don't need to. The knife stops an inch from my throat, held there by nothing visible. Viper strains against the invisible force, his muscles bulging with effort, veins standing out on his forehead. Surprised? I ask softly. I've frozen the air molecules around your blade. You could have the strength of 100 men, and it wouldn't make a difference. With a slight gesture, I send him flying backward, crashing into the equipment behind him. Glass shatters, chemicals spill across the floor, and Viper groans as he struggles to rise. Who cooks? Heisenberg asks, his voice calm as if we're having a normal business conversation. The older chemist points a shaking finger at Viper. He does. He's the only one who knows the full formula. We just assist. Heisenberg turns to Viper, who's now on his feet again, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. Interesting. So you're not just muscle. You have skills. Damn you, Viper spits. You think you can just walk in here and take over? Do you know who I'm connected to? Who protects me? No one protects you now, I say, stepping closer. His eyes dart to me, full of hatred. Go back to wherever you came from and suck your daddy's limp meat, you masked bastard. The words hang in the air for a moment. I feel something cold and hard crystallize in my chest, A familiar sensation now. Cold rage. No one insults my father. Not ever. Heisenberg, I say quietly, I'll handle this one. He nods once, understanding in his posture. Don't take too long. We have business to conclude. I approach Viper slowly, my hands at my sides. He tries to back away, but I've already manipulated the molecules of the floor beneath him, creating a subtle adhesion that holds his feet in place. What the dash, he begins, looking down in confusion. You mentioned my dad, I say, my voice calm through the modulator. That was a mistake. I raise my hand, and Viper's eyes widen as his skin begins to peel away from his forearm, not tearing, but separating at the molecular level. A perfect, bloodless flaying. His scream echoes through the lab as I carefully manipulate his nerve endings, ensuring maximum sensation. My father, I continue conversationally, is the greatest being in creation. Emperor of worlds you couldn't begin to comprehend. The strongest, the wisest, the most worthy of respect. Another layer of skin peels away, this time from his chest. Viper's screams intensify, his body shaking with pain and terror. And you dared speak of him with disrespect. I'm careful with my power, maintaining his vital functions even as I systematically deconstruct him. His lungs remain functional as I remove the protective tissue around them, exposing the pulsing organs to the air. His heart continues to beat as I make its outer layers transparent, revealing the muscular contractions beneath. Please, Viper gasps between screams. Please stop, I didn't know. Of course you didn't know, I agree mildly. How could you? You're nothing. Less than nothing. I manipulate the oxygen flow to his brain, creating momentary hypoxia before restoring it. The cycle of panic and relief is particularly effective, I've found. The human mind breaks more thoroughly when given moments of hope between the pain. I know from experience. Behind me, I can sense the horror radiating from the chemists and the remaining conscious guards. Good. Let them see. Let them understand what happens to those who disrespect what matters to me. After what seems like hours but is probably only minutes, Viper is barely recognizable as human, a living anatomy display of exposed muscle, bone, and organ, kept functioning through my power alone. His screams have faded to whimpers, his mind fractured by pain beyond comprehension. I step back, admiring my work. The old me would be horrified. The hero I once was would consider this monstrous. But that me died long ago, in another world, under another Mark's hands. This me knows the truth. Power is the only reality. And those who disrespect power must learn their place. Heisenberg appears beside me, his white form untouched by the blood and fluids that now coat the floor around Viper's suspended body. That's enough, he says quietly. I nod, stepping aside. Heisenberg positions himself above what remains of Viper's head. His white boot rises, hovers for a moment, then descends. The sound is like a watermelon bursting, a wet crack followed by a splash as blood, bone fragments, and brain matter spray across the floor. Some of it spatters against my black coat, but I don't mind. The material is designed to repel such things. The room falls silent except for the terrified breathing of the witnesses. Heisenberg turns to face them, his white mask expressionless yet somehow radiating authority. I am the cook now, he announces, his modulated voice carrying clearly. This operation belongs to us. Those who prove useful will be rewarded. Those who resist will join your former employer. He gestures to me, and I understand what he wants. With a wave of my hand, I materialize the information we've gathered, personnel files, home addresses, family photos, identities, and scatter them across the bloodied floor. We know who you are, I say softly. We know where you live, who you love, and what you fear. One of the guards begins to sob quietly. Clean this lab, Heisenberg orders. Every trace of contamination must be removed before production resumes. We maintain certain standards. The survivors scramble to obey, giving the remains of Viper a wide berth as they fetch cleaning supplies. As they work, Heisenberg and I move to a corner to observe. Though our masks hide our expressions, I can read his posture, the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his head tilts. Was that display necessary? He asks quietly, for my ears only. I consider the question. Was it necessary? Perhaps not. Efficient? Definitely not. But it served a purpose beyond mere intimidation. They need to understand, I reply. Fear is the foundation. Respect comes later. He studies me for a moment, then nods once. Just remember our purpose here. We're not doing this for pleasure. I know why we're here, I say, perhaps more sharply than intended. To draw out all for one. To understand him. To eliminate him if necessary. And to gather intelligence on this world's power structures, Heisenberg adds. For when the Emperor decides its fate. Yes. For when Dad decides. For when he determines whether this world is worthy of elevation or merely conquest. I watch the terrified workers cleaning Viper's remains from the floor, and I feel nothing. No satisfaction from his suffering. No guilt over his death. Just the calm certainty that I've done what was necessary to protect what matters. Dad protected me when I was broken. When Mark, that monster who wore my former love's face, had finished destroying everything I was. Dad found me, saved me, and loved me despite my weakness. I would burn 1,000 worlds to keep his approval. To see that pride in his eyes when he looks at me. I can't survive if he doesn't love me anymore. The younger chemist has potential, Heisenberg notes, bringing me back to the present. He's afraid, but he's thinking, calculating his options. I follow his gaze to the nervous youngman who's organizing the cleanup with surprising efficiency. You're right. Mark him for possible promotion. Already done. We fall silent again, watching as our new enterprise takes shape around us. By morning, production will resume under stricter quality control. Within a week, our product will begin replacing inferior versions on the street. Within a month, larger players will take notice. And eventually, the shadow behind it all for one, will become aware of the new operators in his territory. That's when our real work begins. As I stand in this blood-soaked lab, surrounded by fear and death, I think about the journey that brought me here. How I went from a hero willing to sacrifice everything for others to this. Whatever I am now. I remember believing in goodness. In justice. In the idea that if you fought hard enough for what was right, the universe would somehow recognize and reward it. Then I remember Mark's hands on my skin, cutting, marking me, forcing himself upon me, as he whispered about love. I remember being trapped in that wheelchair, helpless as he decided when I could eat, sleep, and speak. I remember the world moving on without me, heroes continuing their pointless cycle of fight die repeat while I suffered in silence. And I remember Dad finding me. Carrying me away from that hell. Looking at me not with pity but with recognition, seeing not my brokenness but my potential. The world had its chance with me. It took everything and gave nothing back. Now I serve a different purpose. A greater vision. One that doesn't pretend to be kind or fair but that at least acknowledges the truth. Power is the only reality that matters. And through my father, through the Emperor, I finally have power that no one can take away. One of the guards drops a bucket, the clatter echoing through the lab. Everyone freezes, eyes darting to me and Heisenberg, waiting for punishment. Continue, I say softly. You have until dawn. They return to their tasks with renewed vigor, terrified of failing. This is my life now. Not a hero, not a villain. Something else. Something necessary. War. The bus hummed along the highway, carrying Class 1A toward their next training exercise. Marcus sat near the window, his posture relaxed yet alert as he observed his classmates' interactions. Beside him, Evelyn maintained a friendly conversation with Yayarozu about molecular physics, both getting along pretty well because of the similarities of their abilities. I'm telling you, Kaminari's voice rose above the general chatter. The Grayson siblings are definitely going to be top heroes someday. Did you see them during combat training? Insane. They're certainly skilled, Ida agreed, his hands chopping the air in his characteristic manner. Their quirks appear to be exceptionally well developed for late bloomers. Marcus caught Evelyn's eye briefly, sharing a subtle moment of amusement at their classmates' speculation. Maintaining their cover as late-blooming quirk users had proven effective, explaining their exceptional control while justifying their absence from previous hero schools or competitions was the hardest part, though. Still, they succeeded at that too. Hey, Grayson. Kirishima called out. Is it true your dad was in some special military unit? That's where you learned to fight so well. Marcus offered a practiced smile, the kind that appeared genuine while revealing nothing. My father taught us discipline, yes. Military habits die hard, I suppose. Though he works primarily as a travel writer now. And your uncle? Ashido chimed in, leaning forward eagerly. The one who's Evelyn's dad? I heard he was some kind of special forces guy too. Something like that, Evelyn replied with a modest shrug. Dad doesn't talk about it much. Old injuries forced him to retire early. The conversation shifted as the USJ facility came into view, an enormous domed structure designed for rescue training in various disaster scenarios. Marcus noted Midoriya's excited muttering about the facility's designer, the Space Hero 13, filing away the information for later reference. As they disembarked, Marcus caught sight of Aizawa and 13 waiting at the entrance. Welcome to the unforeseen simulation joint, 13 announced as they entered the massive facility. As you can see, I've designed this facility to prepare you for rescue operations in various disaster environments. Marcus surveyed the enormous space with genuine interest. The engineering was impressive, distinct zones recreating natural disasters with remarkable fidelity. A shipwreck zone with actual water, a landslide area with controlled rockfalls, and a conflagration zone with real fire. Where's All Might? Aizawa asked 13 quietly, though Marcus's enhanced hearing caught the question easily. He was supposed to meet us here. Apparently, he reached his limit during morning patrols, 13 replied, holding up 3 fingers discreetly, a reference to the hero's mysterious time limitation that Marcus had noted previously. Interesting. This confirmed their intelligence about All Might's weakening condition. Marcus filed the information away while maintaining his attentive student expression. As 13 began explaining the dangers of rescue work and the potential lethality of quirks, Marcus's attention was drawn to the central plaza below. The air seemed to shimmer oddly, a distortion that shouldn't be there. He nudged Evelyn subtly, directing her attention with a slight nod. She noticed immediately, her posture shifting imperceptibly as she prepared for potential trouble. Everyone, stay together, Aizawa suddenly commanded, his voice cutting through 13's lecture. Something's wrong. The shimmering air in the plaza coalesced into a dark, swirling vortex. A hand emerged first, pale, disembodied, followed by a face covered with what appeared to be severed hands. Sensei, Marcus said quietly, those aren't staff, are they? No, Aizawa confirmed, pulling his capture weapon loose. Those are villains. The black mist expanded, disgorging dozens of figures onto the central plaza, a motley collection of criminals and thugs led by the hand-covered figure. Marcus's enhanced vision allowed him to count them quickly. 47 individuals with various quirks, most appearing to be common criminals rather than trained combatants. 13. Protect the students. Aizawa ordered, pulling his goggles into place. This is real combat now. But Sensei, Midoriya protested, your fighting style is capture and ambush. Taking on that many no good hero is a one-trick pony, Aizawa replied before launching himself toward the villains below. Marcus watched as Eraserhead engaged the first wave of attackers. Despite his quirk being primarily suited for ambush tactics, Aizawa's hand-to-hand combat skills were impressive, efficient movements that maximized the impact of each strike. We need to evacuate, 13 instructed, gesturing toward the entrance. Stay together and dash. The black mist materialized directly in their path, expanding into a towering column of darkness with glowing yellow eyes. Greetings, the mist spoke, its voice deep and cultured. We are the League of Villains. Forgive our audacity, but today, we've come to UA High School, this bastion of heroism, to end the life of All Might, the symbol of peace. Marcus tensed, calculating angles of attack while assessing the nature of this quirk. Some form of teleportation or spatial manipulation, likely with significant range given their infiltration of a secure facility. Though it appears All Might is not present. Was there a schedule change? The mist continued. No matter. My role remains unchanged. 13 moved to open the ports on their fingertips, but before they could act, Bakugo and Kirishima launched themselves at the misty villain with reckless abandon. Idiots, Marcus muttered as their attacks passed harmlessly through the mist. How dangerous, the villain commented as the smoke from their attacks cleared. You may be students, but you're the best of the best. The mist expanded suddenly, enveloping the entire group. Now, scatter and be tortured to death. Marcus felt the spatial distortion pulling at him. Acting on instinct, he reached for Evelyn's hand, but the warping force separated them before their fingers could touch. As darkness consumed his vision, Marcus caught a final glimpse of his classmates being pulled in different directions. Strategic separation, he thought, keeping completely calm because of Viltrumite training from Craig and Thragg, as the void claimed him. Divide and conquer. Marcus landed hard on rough terrain, immediately rolling to absorb the impact and springing to his feet in a defensive stance. Quick assessment: landslide zone. Unstable footing. Limited visibility due to dust clouds. 3 civilian students nearby: Bakugo, Kirishima, and Mineta. The latter was trembling visibly, tears already forming in his eyes. And approaching rapidly, 5 villains with various physical mutation quirks, already moving to surround them. Well, one villain grinned, his arms extending into serrated blades. Looks like we got some kids to carve up. Bakugo's hands sparked with small explosions. You picked the wrong day to piss me off, extras. Wait. Marcus called out, his voice commanding enough that even Bakugo paused. Formation first. Back to back. Assess before engaging. Don't tell me what to dash, Bakugo began. Do you want to die here? Marcus cut him off, his tone dropping to something colder, more authoritative than his usual friendly demeanor. Form up. Now. Something in Marcus's voice, the absolute certainty, perhaps, or the sudden absence of his usual warmth, made even Bakugo comply, though with obvious reluctance. The 4 students formed a tight circle, facing outward as the villains approached from all sides. Blade arms is mine, Bakugo growled. The rock-skinned one matches my hardening, Kirishima added. Mineta whimpered, his small hands reaching for the purple balls on his head. I'll try to stick them in place. I'll take the 2 on the left, Marcus stated. Mineta, stay in the center. Your quirk works best as support. The blade-armed villain reached Bakugo first, slashing with surprising speed. Bakugo met him with an explosion that sent the villain skidding backward but didn't disable him. Kirishima engaged the rock-skinned opponent, their hardened forms clashing with a sound of stone striking stone. Marcus faced his 2 opponents, one with elongated limbs ending in claws, the other with what appeared to be acid-secreting pores across his exposed skin. Just a couple of teenagers, Acid Skin sneered, spitting a glob of corrosive liquid. Marcus dodged with minimal movement, the acid splashing harmlessly behind him. He needed to be careful here, show enough skill to survive but not so much that it raised questions about his supposed late-blooming quirk. He'd already shown too much when he was still getting used to acting during the entrance exam. Surrender now, Marcus offered, you won't get another chance. The villains laughed, charging simultaneously from different angles. Marcus sidestepped Claw's attack, grabbing the extended limb and using the villain's momentum to throw him into his partner. They collided hard but recovered quickly, separating to attack from opposite sides. Limited strength here, Marcus reminded himself, carefully calculating the appropriate level of force to not kill them in one hit. He blocked Claw's strike with his forearm, delivering a measured counterpunch to the villain's solar plexus, strong enough to incapacitate. As Claws doubled over, gasping for breath, Acid Skin launched another attack, this time sending a spray of corrosive liquid directly at Marcus's face. Marcus ducked under the spray, closing the distance in a blur of speed. His fist connected with Acid Skin's jaw, snapping the villain's head back and sending him crumpling to the ground. He turned to check on his classmates. Bakugo had defeated his opponent, the blade-armed villain lying unconscious with singed clothes. Kirishima was still trading blows with the rock-skinned villain, neither gaining a clear advantage. The 5th villain, who had hung back initially, now charged toward Mineta, wielding what appeared to be a makeshift club. Mineta shrieked in terror, frantically throwing his sticky balls in the villain's direction. Several connected, slowing the attacker's advance but not stopping him completely. Help! Mineta cried out, backing away and tripping over debris. Marcus moved, intercepting the villain before he could reach Mineta. A precise strike to the nerve cluster at the base of the villain's neck sent him crumpling to the ground, unconscious. Thanks, Mineta stammered, wiping tears and snot from his face. I thought I was gonna die. Turning his attention to Kirishima's ongoing battle, Marcus assessed the situation. The rock-skinned villain was proving resilient, his quirk apparently providing greater durability than Kirishima's hardening. Kirishima, switch. Marcus called out, moving to intercept the villain. As Kirishima disengaged, Marcus stepped in. The villain swung a massive fist, which Marcus caught. What the dash, the villain gasped as Marcus held his fist immobile. Marcus met the villain's eyes. Where is your leader? The one with the hands. Damn you, kid, the villain spat. Marcus applied pressure to the captured fist, the sound of cracking bones filling the air as he crushed the villain's hand. The villain screamed, dropping to his knees as Marcus maintained his grip. I'll ask once more, Marcus said, his voice eerily calm as he increased the pressure. Where is your leader? Bakugo, Kirishima, and Mineta stared in shock at the sudden brutality from their usually friendly classmate. Central Plaza. The villain gasped through his pain. With the Nomu. Please stop. Marcus released the mangled hand, allowing the villain to collapse. Thank you for your help. He turned to find his classmates watching him with varying expressions of surprise and unease. What? He asked, his cold demeanor shifting back toward his usual persona, though not quite reaching it. We need information. Dude, Kirishima said hesitantly, that was intense. It was necessary, Marcus replied simply. Now we know where the leader is. We need to regroup with the others and formulate a plan. Bakugo studied Marcus with narrowed eyes. You're not as soft as you pretend to be, are you, Flyboy? Marcus met his gaze evenly. We all do what's necessary when lives are at stake. Now, let's move. The Central Plaza is this way. Mineta looked between them, still shaking. Wait, we're going toward the villains? Shouldn't we try to escape? Our classmates are still scattered throughout the facility, Marcus explained, his tone more patient with a frightened Mineta. We regroup, assess the situation, then decide the best course of action. As they began moving carefully through the landslide zone, Marcus noted the changed way his classmates regarded him now. The revelation of this colder, more ruthless side had altered their perception, something he would need to address later to maintain his cover. It simply was too difficult to not fall back into training with how hard Thragg and Craig trained him. But for now, their mission was clear: regroup, assess, and neutralize the threat. Evelyn materialized in the conflagration zone, surrounded by burning buildings and intense heat. She landed gracefully, immediately assessing her situation. Two students nearby, Todoroki and Ojiro. Both appeared unharmed but disoriented from the teleportation. And approaching through the flames, 7 villains of varying appearance, all looking pleased at what they assumed were easy targets. Stay behind me, Evelyn instructed her classmates, stepping forward with calm authority. I don't need protection, Todoroki replied coolly, frost already forming on his right side. Then protect Ojiro, she countered, not taking her eyes off the approaching threats. His quirk is disadvantaged in this environment. The lead villain, a woman with metallic scales covering her body, laughed. Aren't you kids cute, trying to organize? This isn't a classroom exercise, brats. The villains charged as one, clearly expecting easy victory against mere university students. Evelyn remained perfectly still until they were within 10 meters. Then, with a subtle gesture, she manipulated the oxygen molecules in the air before the approaching villains, creating a momentary vacuum. The villains staggered, gasping for breath that suddenly wasn't there, their momentum broken by unexpected respiratory distress. What the hell? One managed to choke out as Evelyn released the effect, allowing them to breathe again. Surrender, she stated simply, her usually warm voice now clinically detached. You're outmatched. The scaled woman snarled, recovering first. Cocky bitch. She charged again. Evelyn sighed softly, then extended her hand. Pink energy surrounded the villain's metallic scales, and suddenly the woman screamed as her own armor began to constrict around her body. Your scales have a fascinating molecular structure, Evelyn observed calmly as the woman collapsed, her own quirk-created armor crushing her painfully. I'm merely adjusting the spacing between molecules. Nothing permanent, yet. The remaining villains hesitated, watching their comrade writhe on the ground. Now, Evelyn continued, her voice remaining unervingly calm, I'll ask for information. Where is your leader? What is your objective here? When none responded immediately, She tightened the molecular bonds in the scaled woman's armor further, eliciting another scream. "This is your last opportunity to answer voluntarily," Evelyn stated. Todoroki and Ojiro exchanged glances, clearly surprised at how Evelyn acts in contrast with how kind and friendly she usually is. Central Plaza. One villain finally blurted out. "The boss is waiting there with the Nomu." "Nomu?" Evelyn prompted, loosening the scaled woman's armor slightly as a reward for cooperation. "It's a weapon," the villain continued nervously. "Made to kill All Might. That's why we're here. The boss wants to kill the symbol of peace." Evelyn processed this information quickly. A biological weapon designed to counter All Might would be strong. Marcus needed to be warned, since they both are limited to below All Might based on Roberta's calculations. "Thank you," she said, then with a gesture, manipulated the oxygen levels around all 7 villains simultaneously, causing them to lose consciousness from hypoxia within seconds. She turned to find Todoroki watching her with newfound wariness. "That was efficient," he commented, his heterochromatic eyes studying her with increased interest. "Your quirk is more versatile than you've demonstrated in class." "Combat situations require different applications," Evelyn replied, her tone warming slightly as she returned to her normal persona. "We should move toward the Central Plaza. If that's where their leader is, that's where the other students will be in most danger." "Agreed," Todoroki nodded, though his gaze remained evaluative. "Your interrogation technique was unexpected." Evelyn offered a carefully calibrated smile. Sometimes kindness isn't the appropriate response to those who mean you harm. As they began making their way through the burning zone, Evelyn began to reason, knowing her boyfriend, that he would be already heading to the Central Plaza. So she had to head there fast. If this Nomu was truly designed to counter All Might, it was very dangerous. The Central Plaza had become a battlefield. Aizawa was engaged with multiple villains simultaneously, his capture weapon and erasure quirk keeping him ahead of the overwhelming numbers, but only barely. Marcus, accompanied by Bakugo, Kirishima, and Mineta, observed from the edge of the landslide zone, assessing the situation before engaging. "Aizawa-sensei is amazing," Kirishima whispered, watching their teacher take down 3 villains in rapid succession. "He's reaching his limit," Marcus corrected, noting the increasing intervals between Aizawa's blinks. "His quirk has a time constraint, and he's fighting too many opponents." As if confirming his words, Aizawa suddenly staggered, his movement slowing as fatigue set in. The hand-covered villain, clearly the leader, noticed the opening and moved to intercept. "We need to dash," Marcus began but stopped as he sensed movement behind them. He turned to find Evelyn approaching with Todoroki and Ojiro. "Dangerous," they subtly signed. "Yeah," he signed back. "The leader appears to have a disintegration quirk." Unknown capabilities of the large creature beside him. They watched in horror as the leader grabbed Aizawa's elbow, causing the pro-hero's skin, muscle, and eventually bone to crumble away as if decayed instantly. "That's his quirk," Evelyn whispered. "Decay on contact." Marcus nodded grimly. "And the large one, that must be the Nomu the villains mentioned." The creature was massive, easily 2.5 meters tall, with an exposed brain, beaked face, and unnaturally muscled physique. It moved with disturbing speed for its size, grabbing the injured Aizawa and slamming him into the ground with enough force to crack the concrete. "We need a plan," Todoroki stated. "That thing is clearly designed for raw power." "I'll freeze it," Todoroki continued. "Bakugo can attack from range." "The rest of you no," Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying quiet authority. "That creature was designed to fight All Might. Your ice won't hold it." "Then what do you want us to do?" Bakugo demanded. Marcus exchanged a glance with Evelyn, a silent conversation passing between them. They couldn't reveal too much of their true capabilities, but neither could they stand by and watch their teacher be killed. "Evelyn and I will engage directly," Marcus decided. "Our quirks provide the best combination of offense and defense. Todoroki, cover us with ranged ice attacks. Bakugo, be ready to provide explosive distractions if needed." "And us?" Kirishima asked, gesturing to himself, Ojiro, and Mineta. "Protect any other students who might arrive," Evelyn instructed. "And be ready to evacuate Aizawa-sensei when we create an opening." "I don't think I can dash," Mineta began, trembling. "You can," Marcus cut him off firmly. "Focus on using your quirk to immobilize any villains who approach. You don't have to fight directly." Before anyone could object further, a new disturbance caught their attention. The main entrance doors burst open, revealing several more students, Midoriya, Azui, and Uraraka, being pursued by villains. The hand-covered leader noticed them immediately, turning away from the battered Aizawa with clear intent. "Now," Marcus said, launching himself forward with Evelyn close behind. He moved fast. His target was clear: intercept the leader before he could reach Midoriya and the others. The leader, Shigaraki, one of the villains, had called him, turned in surprise as Marcus appeared in his path. "Another NPC." Shigaraki muttered, reaching toward Marcus with his decay-inducing hand. Marcus caught his wrist before it could make contact, applying just enough pressure to make the villain wince but not enough to break bones. "Not yet. Your game ends here," Marcus stated coldly. Shigaraki's eyes widened behind the hand covering his face. "Nomu," he called. "Kill this one." The massive creature responded instantly, abandoning Aizawa's broken form to charge toward Marcus. Marcus released Shigaraki and turned to meet the new threat. The Nomu's fist connected with his crossed arms, the impact sending him skidding backward despite his braced stance. "Strong," he noted internally. As the Nomu pressed its advantage, charging forward for another strike, pink energy suddenly surrounded its feet, the concrete beneath it liquefying and then resolidifying in an instant, trapping the creature momentarily. Evelyn stepped forward, her hands glowing with energy. "I've temporarily altered the molecular structure of the concrete," she explained to Marcus. "It won't hold long." Indeed, the Nomu was already pulling free, the concrete cracking around its immense strength. "Combined attack," Marcus decided. "I'll engage directly. You provide support." Evelyn nodded, understanding immediately. Marcus launched himself at the Nomu just as it freed itself, delivering a punch to its midsection. The Nomu barely flinched, swinging its massive arm in a counterattack that Marcus barely dodged. Shock absorption, Marcus immediately realized. Physical attacks alone won't be sufficient. "Evelyn," he called. "Internal disruption." Understanding immediately, Evelyn focused her powers on the Nomu's exposed brain, attempting to manipulate its molecular structure directly, something she still can't do very well, not being used to manipulating organic matter, so she is very limited on that front. The creature staggered, a guttural sound emerging from its beaked mouth, but then it straightened, apparently adapting to the attack. "Regeneration 2, Evelyn noted grimly. "Multiple quirks in one body." "That should be impossible," Todoroki commented from his position, sending a wave of ice that temporarily immobilized the Nomu's legs. The ice shattered almost immediately as the creature flexed its muscles, sending fragments flying in all directions. Marcus began to think about what to do. With his current limitations, a direct confrontation would be challenging but not impossible. The key was to exploit the creature's apparent lack of intelligence. "Distraction pattern," he called to Evelyn. They had trained for this, coordinated attacks against superior opponents. Even with their powers limited by this world's constraints, their tactical experience remained intact. Marcus charged again, this time aiming for the Nomu's legs rather than its torso. As the creature bent to swipe at him, Evelyn created a momentary vacuum around its head, disrupting its concentration. The opening was brief but enough. Marcus delivered a series of strikes to the creature's joints, knees, elbows, shoulders, targeting possible weaknesses in its structure. The Nomu roared, swinging wildly now. One massive fist caught Marcus on the shoulder, sending him crashing into a nearby fountain. "That hurt," he thought, annoyed, rising from the shattered marble. "Strength definitely comparable to me right now." The Nomu turned its attention to Evelyn, who floated just beyond its reach, manipulating the air density to maintain her position. As it charged her, Marcus saw his opportunity. He launched himself from the fountain debris, accelerating to his max speed in this world. As the Nomu tried to attack Evelyn, Marcus hit its exposed neck from behind with all his strength, his hand positioned like a blade, his father's signature chop. A shockwave formed that was immediately absorbed as the Nomu's head partially separated from its body, blood spraying from the wound as its spinal column was severed. For a moment, the creature stood motionless. Then, impossibly, its head began to reattach, the wound closing as its regeneration quirk activated. Not good enough, Marcus muttered, preparing for another attack. But before he could move, Evelyn descended beside him, her hands glowing with pink energy. Together, she said simply. Both are still not truly worried. Having faced Thragg in training made this feel like child's play. Just a too tough toy to break. As the Nomu turned to face them, still regenerating, they attacked simultaneously. Marcus delivered another powerful strike to the same location, while Evelyn tried to disrupt the regeneration process of the wound with her powers. This time, the Nomu's head separated completely, its massive body collapsing as Evelyn prevented the regeneration from reconnecting the vital neural pathways. Marcus immediately caught the head and crushed it till brain matter and blood sprayed everywhere, making sure its brain was destroyed in case it could regenerate from a severed head. You never know after all, as Thragg always told them, double, no, triple tap if need be, as they both panted from exhaustion. It finally caught up to them, as they couldn't maintain their appearance of perfect power as they normally did, something Thragg taught them too, to always bluff when possible. Never knowing if there was a hidden enemy waiting for weakness, making them back away in fear, a shocked silence fell over the plaza as students and villains alike stared at the fallen creature. Shigaraki began scratching his neck furiously. No, no, no. That's not fair. The Nomu was designed to kill All Might. How could some dash his rant was interrupted by the main doors bursting open once more. This time, a familiar silhouette appeared, backlit by the entrance lights. Have no fear, boomed a voice that carried across the entire facility. For I am here. All Might had arrived, his trademark smile nowhere to be seen as he took in the scene, the injured Aizawa, the scattered students, the villains, and the headless Nomu at the feet of bloodied Marcus and Evelyn. Shigaraki's scratching intensified. You're too late. Your students already killed our Nomu. This wasn't how the game was supposed to go. The black mist, Kurogiri, Marcus had heard Shigaraki call him, materialized beside the hand-covered villain. Shigaraki Tamura, we must retreat. The pro-heroes will be arriving momentarily. Shigaraki continued scratching, his agitation visible even through the hand covering his face. It's not fair. They cheated somehow. Shigaraki Tamura, Kurogiri insisted, his misty form expanding. Fine, Shigaraki spat, pointing at Marcus and Evelyn. But remember this, players, next time, the game won't be on easy mode. Before All Might or any of the students could react, Kurogiri's mist enveloped Shigaraki, and both villains vanished. We need to check on Aizawa-sensei, Marcus began, but the world suddenly tilted around him. The last thing Marcus saw before darkness claimed him was All Might's concerned face and Evelyn collapsing beside him, both of them finally succumbing to the strain of their battle. Mission accomplished, he thought as he saw only darkness. The students were protected and we've drawn attention to ourselves for the upcoming sidekick tournament. Uncle Thragg dash, he thought, before he caught himself, the Emperor will be pleased. The evidence board in Detective Thragg Grayson's office had become a complex web of strings, photographs, and case notes. To any observer, it would appear to be the work of a meticulous investigator tracking a drug distribution network. In reality, it was a carefully constructed facade, a plausible reason for Thragg to investigate areas that would eventually lead him to his true target. Thragg studied the board, his imposing frame making the standard-issue police chair creak beneath him. The battle beast coat remained at home, replaced by a tailored charcoal suit that still struggled to contain his muscular physique. His mustache was impeccably groomed, adding to the aura of authority that made even veteran officers defer to him despite his relatively recent arrival. The distribution patterns have shifted, he noted, speaking to Detective Tanaka, who stood nearby. Previously centralized in the Harbor District, now fragmenting into smaller cells across these 4 zones. Tanaka nodded, impressed by his colleague's analytical skills. That's consistent with the pressure we've been applying. They're adapting. Not adapting, Thragg corrected, tapping a particular photograph. Retreating. Something has disrupted their hierarchy. These aren't strategic redeployments, they're defensive reactions. The door opened as Captain Morita entered, carrying a fresh case file. Grayson, got something that might connect to your drug network investigation. Thragg accepted the file, scanning its contents with efficiency while maintaining an appropriate reading pace. Warehouse District. For bodies. Signs of quirk-based execution. Exactly, Morita confirmed. Forensics found traces of the same designer drug you've been tracking. But here's the interesting part. These weren't street-level dealers. Mid-management at minimum. Thragg studied the crime scene photos. The victims' expressions showed terror rather than surprise. They had seen death coming. Professional hit, he observed. Targeted elimination rather than territorial dispute. That's our assessment too, Morita agreed. The question is, who's cleaning house, and why now? Thragg's mind worked through the possibilities, already seeing how this development could serve his actual objective. Permission to investigate the scene personally. Granted, Morita replied. Take Tanaka with you. And Grayson? The commissioner's impressed with your work so far. Said you have good instincts. As Morita left, Thragg allowed himself a slight smile. Humans were so easily impressed by competence, so willing to trust those who displayed even marginal superiority. It made infiltration almost disappointingly simple. Ready when you are, Tanaka said, grabbing his jacket. Thragg nodded. The pieces were aligning perfectly. The warehouse crime scene was still cordoned off when they arrived, forensic techs meticulously documenting every detail. Thragg ducked under the police tape as he immediately cataloged information invisible to human investigators. Residual quirk energy lingered in the air, distinctive patterns that suggested a quirk focused on pressure manipulation. Blood spatter patterns on the walls told a story of execution-style kills, but with peculiar directionality. Something's off about the blood patterns, Tanaka observed, unknowingly echoing Thragg's thoughts. It's like they were killed from inside out. Precisely, Thragg confirmed, kneeling to examine a dark residue on the concrete floor. He rubbed it between his fingers, analyzing its molecular composition through touch alone. This substance. Have it tested immediately. A forensic tech approached, evidence bag ready. What are we looking for, detective? Chemical markers consistent with quirk enhancement drugs, but with a specific modification. Thragg deposited the sample in the bag. Compare it against cases involving quirk amplification gone wrong. As the tech hurried away, Tanaka gave him a curious look. You think this is related to quirk boosters? Not boosters, Thragg corrected. Something more sophisticated. These victims weren't killed for territory or product. They were eliminated because they'd seen something they shouldn't have. He moved to the center of the warehouse, where the killing had begun. His enhanced vision detected microscopic traces of a substance the forensic team had missed, a compound with a molecular structure unlike standard narcotics. Tanaka, he called, access the database for any similar cases involving pressure-based quirk deaths in the past 6 months. While his partner worked his tablet, Thragg continued his examination, mentally connecting these deaths to his ultimate target. The Shai Hasaikai wouldn't be in any official records yet. Their operations were too careful, too traditional to appear on police radar. But they would have suppliers, competitors, and occasionally, obstacles that required removal. Got 3 cases, Tanaka reported. 2 from 4 months ago, 1 from last month. All involving underworld figures with connections to drug distribution. Locations. All in different districts, but... Tanaka's eyes widened slightly as he noticed the pattern. All within 2 kilometers of properties owned by shell companies linked to the Hata family. Thragg nodded, satisfaction hidden behind his professional demeanor. The Hata family, a declining Yakuza group that had recently experienced a change in management. His research indicated they had historical ties to the Shai Hasaikai. We need to investigate these shell companies, Thragg stated. The killings aren't random. They're systematic elimination of witnesses to something larger. Tanaka looked impressed. I'll request the warrants. Do that, Thragg agreed. I'll complete my analysis here. As Tanaka stepped away to make the call, Thragg allowed himself a moment of reflection. The path to overhaul and the Shai Hasaikai was becoming clearer. Soon, he would have legitimate reason to investigate them directly, and with them, access to Eri and her time-reversing quirk. His phone vibrated with an incoming message from Amanda. Kids doing well at UA. Izuku visited again yesterday. His mother makes excellent tea. Progress continues. Thragg's expression softened imperceptibly. Marcus and Evelyn were performing their roles perfectly, integrating with Midoriya and establishing trust. The boy's quirk made him valuable, potentially even worth preserving if he could be turned to their cause. He sent a brief reply, acknowledged. Maintain approach. Pocketing the phone, Thragg returned to his investigation, methodically building the case that would lead him exactly where he needed to go. In a different part of the city, Nolan Grayson, now operating under the alias Heisenberg, sat in a nondescript car, observing a seemingly abandoned warehouse. Beside him, Samantha, War, remained perfectly still, her eyes never leaving their target. Third delivery today, Nolan noted as another unmarked van approached the warehouse. Same pattern as yesterday. Samantha nodded, her voice soft yet cold. Regular schedule. Disciplined. Unlike most criminal operations in the city. They watched as masked men unloaded crates with practiced efficiency. No wasted movements, no unnecessary conversation. Professional in a way that street criminals rarely achieved. Dad was right, Samantha observed. The Shai Hasaikai operate differently. More traditional. More focused. Nolan nodded. Yakuza. Old school. They view the current villain culture as chaotic and undisciplined. They're not wrong, Samantha replied, a hint of approval in her tone. The last crate disappeared into the warehouse, and the van departed. Nolan checked his watch. Shift change in 20 minutes. That gives us our window. Samantha's fingers tapped lightly against her thigh, the only outward sign of her anticipation. Infiltration parameters? Observation only, Nolan reminded her. Your father wants confirmation of their operations before direct engagement. A slight frown crossed Samantha's face at the mention of Thragg. He's being cautious. We could eliminate their entire operation today if he allowed it. Patience, Nolan counseled gently. Your father's strategies have never failed. There's purpose in his restraint. Samantha's expression softened immediately at this defense of Thragg. Of course. I didn't mean to question his wisdom. Nolan studied her briefly, noting the immediate shift in her demeanor. War-torn Eve's transformation into Samantha had been remarkable, physically healed but psychologically complex. Her devotion to Thragg bordered on worship, her entire identity now wrapped around his approval. It's time, he said finally, checking his equipment. Remember, we observe only. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. Samantha nodded, her black mask already materializing around her face through use of her abilities. Understood. As they exited the vehicle, Nolan couldn't help but reflect on how different this world was from the one they'd conquered. So much more theatrical. Heroes and villains with costumes and code names, playing at a game with rules neither side fully understood. It would make the eventual conquest both simpler and more complicated. Simpler because the population was accustomed to being protected by powerful beings. More complicated because they might resist being saved by those same powers. But that was his older brother's concern. Nolan's job was simpler: gather intelligence, establish their criminal persona, and prepare the ground for what would come. And so Heisenberg and War moved silently toward the warehouse, shadows among shadows. Back at police headquarters, Thragg stood before Captain Morita, presenting his findings. The evidence suggests these killings are part of a larger operation, he explained, gesturing to the crime scene photos arranged on Morita's desk. The victims weren't random targets, they were specifically eliminated to remove witnesses. Morita frowned, studying the images. Witnesses to what? That's what we need to determine, Thragg replied. But the connection to the Hata family properties is significant. Their recent management change coincides with the first killings 4 months ago. The Hata family, Morita mused. They've been quiet for years. Declining influence in the Yakuza hierarchy. Perhaps their decline was exaggerated, Thragg suggested. Or perhaps someone is using their remaining infrastructure for new purposes. Morita leaned back in his chair, considering. You're thinking new management means new business? Precisely, Thragg confirmed. The molecular structure of the residue found at the scene indicates sophisticated chemical engineering, beyond typical street drugs. Someone is developing something new, something worth killing to protect. And you think the Hatas are involved? Not directly, Thragg clarified. I believe they're a front. Historical records indicate the Hata family had connections to another Yakuza group, the Shai Hasaikai. Morita's eyebrows rose. The Shai Hasaikai? They've been practically invisible for years. Old-school Yakuza, traditional to the core. Which makes them perfect for this operation, Thragg pointed out. They avoid attention, maintain discipline, and have the infrastructure for sophisticated operations. Morita studied him for a moment. This is solid work, Grayson. But investigating Yakuza is dangerous territory. They don't respond well to police attention. All the more reason to pursue it, Thragg countered. Whatever they're developing, it's worth multiple executions to keep secret. That suggests significant danger to public safety. After a moment's consideration, Morita nodded. All right. I'll approve continued investigation into these connections. But tread carefully, Yakuza have eyes everywhere. Understood, Captain, Thragg replied, satisfaction hidden behind his professional demeanor. As he gathered his materials to leave, Morita added, by the way, how's your family settling in? Your brother and the kids adjusting to Mizudafu? They're adapting well, Thragg replied, allowing a hint of warmth to enter his voice. The children are enjoying UA University. It's a prestigious institution. That it is, Morita agreed. My nephew tried 3 years running to get in. Those kids of yours must have impressive quirks. They work hard, Thragg said simply, deflecting further inquiry with practiced modesty. As he returned to his office, Thragg reflected on how perfectly their integration was proceeding. His position in the police force provided legitimacy and access. Nolan's emerging underworld presence as Heisenberg established connections in the criminal element. The children at UA were positioning themselves within the next generation of heroes. All pieces on the board are moving into their right place. This world itself was too illusioned by heroes, by their idealistic views, and by their inefficient flashiness. That way of thinking, way of acting, could make eventual integration annoying. So many wannabe heroes. So many are choosing the path of villains, thinking it would be revolutionary. It would require so much killing, so much waste of DNA. Thragg could wipe a country off the map to make an example, but again, too much waste. No, he will show them the fallacy in their ways. Show them the incompetence of heroes and the foolishness of villains. That their system only hurts their people. Their laws are holding them back from truly exploring their potential by only allowing quirk usage when having a license, forbidding the exercise of something fundamentally a part of you. Ridiculous. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The caller ID showed UA University's administrative office. Detective Grayson, he answered, his tone professional. Mr. Grayson, this is Principal Nizu of UA University, came the response, the voice surprisingly cheerful despite the serious undertone. I'm calling regarding an incident involving your daughter Evelyn and your nephew Marcus. Thragg straightened, though he had been expecting this call. Today was the scheduled USJ training exercise, the day the League of Villains would attack in their attempt to kill All Might. Marcus and Evelyn would have been present, and knowing their capabilities, they would have intervened effectively. What kind of incident? He asked, injecting appropriate parental concern into his voice. There was an attack on the USJ facility during a class exercise, Nizu explained. Villains infiltrated the training ground. Your daughter and nephew were instrumental in protecting their classmates, but their actions have raised some questions we'd like to discuss with you and your brother in person. Were they injured? Thragg demanded, playing the role of concerned father perfectly. They're both in the recovery ward now, Nizu assured him. Recovery girl says they're suffering from quirk exhaustion but will make a full recovery. However, there are aspects of their intervention that require discussion with their guardians. Of course, Thragg replied. My brother and I will be there within the hour. As he ended the call, Thragg allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. Marcus and Evelyn had performed exactly as expected, demonstrating enough power to be noticed without revealing their true capabilities. He dialed Nolan's secure line. When his brother answered, he spoke without preamble. The USJ incident that the League of Villains was planning has occurred. The one Roberta found out about. Marcus and Evelyn intervened as anticipated. We're summoned to UA within the hour. Understood, Nolan replied. We've completed our initial surveillance of the Shai Hasaikai facility. Samantha is compiling the data now. Good. Meet me at the university. We'll discuss your findings afterward. Ending the call, Thragg gathered his coat. Events were accelerating precisely on schedule. The League of Villains had made their move. The Shai Hasaikai investigation was proceeding. And soon, the UA Sports Festival would provide the perfect showcase for Marcus and Evelyn's carefully calibrated abilities. Everything was proceeding according to plan. This world would never see its conquest coming until it was already complete.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going. Plus, it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.